There are places in the jungle where maps don't show and where people never return. We slept next to one of them. I used to chase storms because it made me feel alive. Some people spend their whole lives trying to avoid bad weather, planning vacations around clear skies, canceling outings when the radar glows red. But for me, the sound of thunder was an invitation. I studied meteorology, learned to read Doppler sweeps, memorized wind patterns across the southern plains. My job wasn't a hobby, it was an obsession. I told myself I was documenting extreme weather for research, for public safety, for storm spotter networks. But if I'm honest, the real reason was simpler. Storms reminded me that the world was still wild, that something vast and uncontrollable still lived in the sky, and if I paid enough attention, I could meet it face to face. That obsession eventually brought me to the Texas Panhandle. Flat horizons, big skies, and weather that could change faster than a mood swing. A place where you could drive 30 miles under blue skies and still get swallowed by a rotating wall of darkness. But what happened out there wasn't a storm, not in any way that I understood. And when I talk about it now, people lean forward like they're waiting for a punchline, some dramatic tornado escape or a brush with lightning. I almost wish that's all it was. The truth is stranger and heavier. It started on a day that should have been clear. I'd been tracking a low-pressure system crawling across the panhandle. Models suggested instability, some dry-line collisions, but nothing major. Maybe a few weak supercells, maybe nothing at all. But something about the air felt restless. If you spend enough years chasing storms, you develop instincts that aren't in the radar data. A shift in the wind, the way animals go quiet, the silence before convection builds. I followed it west past Amarillo, then through smaller towns whose names blur together now, places with a gas station, a diner, and not much else. And then I smelled it. Rain. Not dust, not fertilizer, not ozone before lightning. Rain, that wet mineral smell, like pavement after a summer downpour. But the sky above me was blank, washed in the kind of blue that only the high plains can manage. No clouds, no haze, no humidity. Just that smell, thick and wrong, as if the earth had drunk a storm I couldn't see. I slowed my truck, leaning out the window to breathe deeper. The smell wasn't faint. It was strong enough to coat my tongue, to make me swallow, and it didn't fade with the wind or shift as I drove. It clung like fog that only my senses could feel. A green road sign announced the next town, Dalhart, Texas. Population just under 8,000, though from the way the highway emptied, you'd think it was deserted. I wasn't planning to stop, but the smell grew stronger as I approached, as though the town itself was exhaling it. By the time I rolled down Main Street, something inside me was already unsettled. Not just by the smell, but by the silence. No kids on bikes, no cars cruising past, just people, standing. I'll never forget the first faces I saw. A woman in a flower print dress, frozen outside a grocery store with a paper bag clutched to her chest. A man in coveralls leaning against a truck that hadn't been turned on. A pair of teenagers at a crosswalk, hands linked, unmoving. All of them staring at me as I drove through, not waving, not curious, just staring. Their eyes followed me the way livestock track a predator, flat, unblinking, resigned. I kept telling myself there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe a parade rehearsal, maybe a drill. Maybe I just wandered in at the world's most inconvenient moment. But I'd driven through dozens of towns in storm season, and I'd never seen anything like this. I pulled over near what looked like the town square. The second I stepped out of the truck, the smell hit me harder. Fresh rain on dry dirt. Except the ground was bone dry. Dust clung to the sidewalks. My boots raised little puffs with every step. The silence was crushing. Normally, even small towns have background noise. Radios, laughter, the slam of a screen door. Here, the only sound was the faint ticking of my truck engine cooling. And then as I stood there, the townsfolk began to move. Not all at once. Just a ripple, like the first row of corn bending in a wind you can't feel. Heads turned in sync, eyes locked on me. No words, no change in expression. Just that impossible weight of a whole town watching. I forced myself to wave, like some idiot tourist trying to break the tension. "Afternoon," I called out, my voice sounding small against the wide silence. No one answered. I got back in the truck. My fingers trembled on the ignition, but the engine caught, loud in the hush. I wanted to keep driving, to leave that town behind before the unease rooted deeper. But something in me, curiosity, stupidity, maybe the storm chaser's instinct for going toward what feels wrong, made me linger. I drove slowly past the square, scanning faces. That's when I noticed something worse than the staring. Every single person I passed was wet. Not drenched, not dripping, but damp, like they just stepped in from a drizzle. Their hair clung, clothes darkened at the seams, shoes left faint marks on the dust that evaporated too fast. Yet the sky above was still flawless blue. I parked again, this time outside a small diner. Its neon sign buzzed, though no lights were on inside. I pushed open the door. A bell tinkled overhead. The smell of rain thickened, mixing with stale grease. Every booth was occupied. Farmers, couples, families. Plates of food sat in front of them, untouched. Coffee steamed in cups no one lifted, and every face turned toward me the moment I entered. I froze at the threshold, heartbeat drumming in my throat. Is everything okay?" I asked, though the words felt absurd. Silence. Then a man near the counter spoke. His voice was low, steady, like he'd been waiting years to deliver it. "You're late." My stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" He didn't repeat himself. He just stared. The others stared with him. And in that moment, I felt something I'd never felt in a storm chase. Not awe, not thrill, but the crawling certainty that I was prey. I backed out of the diner. The bell jingled overhead, cheerful and wrong. Outside, the street looked emptier. Those who'd been scattered around the square were gone. I don't remember starting the truck. I only remember the sudden urge to flee, to get out of Dalhart before whatever was happening decided I belonged to it. I pressed the accelerator hard, tires squealing as I shot down Main Street. But the town wasn't done with me. On the edge of Dalhart, where the road narrowed to 2 lanes and the horizon stretched bare again, I saw them. A line of people. Standing across the highway, shoulder to shoulder. Dozens of them. Wet clothes, blank eyes, blocking the way forward. I slammed the brakes, gravel spraying. My truck stopped just short of the first row. They didn't flinch. I threw the wheel hard, pulling into a side street that twisted between empty houses. Curtains fluttered, though no breeze blew. Every corner I turned, more figures appeared, standing, waiting, watching. And through it all, the smell of rain thickened until it felt like drowning. That was the first moment I knew I was trapped. I faced down rotating supercells, lightning that split the ground yards away, hail that could punch through windshields, but nothing had ever made me shake like the sight of that silent town pressing in from every angle. Because storms obey rules, physics, pressure, thermodynamics. You can understand them, predict them, even respect them. What I found in Dalhart obeyed nothing, and I still don't know how I got out. I kept driving in tight loops, trying to work my way back to the highway, but every turn ended in the same thing. Rows of damp faces, silent and still, blocking the way forward. The panic rising in me wasn't the wild kind that makes you scream. It was the cold, creeping kind, like water filling a basement. My hands were slick on the wheel, my breath shallow. At one intersection, I saw a boy, maybe 12 years old, standing alone. His shirt clung to him, hair plastered against his forehead, water dripping from the tips. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me with the same stillness as the rest. But when I slowed the truck, his lips parted. "They said you'd come." The words were clear, but his voice was strange, hollow, like he was speaking from the bottom of a culvert. I hit the gas again. Tires screeched. I didn't care if I blew them out, I just wanted out of that maze of streets. The boy didn't step forward, didn't chase. He just turned his head as I passed, following my movement with that flat, too patient stare. Dalhart wasn't a big town, but the roads twisted as if they wanted me lost. I'd turn a corner, expecting the open highway, only to find myself staring at the courthouse again, or the same diner with its dead neon buzzing. I checked my GPS, dead signal. My phone, which had full bars not an hour before, now blinked, no service. Every loop drew me deeper into panic. My tank was a quarter full, not enough to waste on endless circles. I had to make a decision, so I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't. I stopped. I pulled onto a side street lined with sagging houses. Curtains shifted as if someone had just let go of them. The rain smell pressed heavier, mixing with something else now, metallic, almost coppery like rust on a wet fence. I killed the engine. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the tick of cooling metal felt loud. I sat there, knuckles white on the wheel, telling myself I'd just wait. Wait for someone normal to walk by. Wait for the smell to fade. Wait for whatever this was to show its hand. But the town didn't wait. The first knock came on the back of the truck, a single sharp rap, then another. Then 3 more in a rhythm too precise to be random. I spun around, but the rear window was fogging over, not from my breath, but from outside. Moisture beaded on the glass, running in streaks as if rain poured on the back half of my truck alone. I turned the key. Nothing. Not a click, not a cough. Dead. The knocks grew louder, circling. First on the tailgate, then the driver's side, then the hood. I locked the doors out of reflex, though some part of me knew locks wouldn't matter. I was shaking now, whispering to myself like a child, "This isn't real. This isn't real. It's just stress, just heat stroke, just..." And then I saw them. In the side mirror, a figure stood directly behind the truck. A woman. She wasn't just damp. Water poured from her hair in sheets, streaming down her arms, dripping from her fingers. Her face was pale, her lips bluish. She leaned close to the glass, though she never touched it. Her eyes met mine in the mirror. For a second, I thought I saw recognition there, something human, pleading. But then her mouth opened, no words came out, just the sound of rain. Not a whisper, not an imitation. Real rain. Heavy, hard, like a downpour on a tin roof. It filled the cab of my truck, though the air outside was still dry. My ears rang with it. My lungs burned like I was inhaling water. I ripped the door handle, shoved my way out. The instant I hit the street, the sound cut off. The woman was gone. Only dry dust clung to my boots. I ran. I don't remember locking the truck. Don't remember which direction I chose. I only remember houses blurring past, faces in windows watching as I sprinted down cracked sidewalks. Every breath pulled in that rain smell deeper, until I wanted to gag. I stumbled into the town square again. The courthouse loomed over me, its clock hands stuck at 4:12. The diner sat quiet, windows fogged from the inside, though no one had touched their food. The whole town was a loop, pulling me back no matter where I ran. And then I heard it. Not knocking this time. Not silence, but footsteps. Dozens of them, coming from every direction, measured in unison like boots on parade ground. I spun, searching for an opening, but every street was filling with people. Not running, not hurrying, just walking toward clothes dripping, faces blank. I backed toward the courthouse steps. "What do you want?" I shouted, voice cracking. No one answered. But the boy's voice came again, from everywhere at once. Hollow, culvert deep. "You're late." I scrambled up the steps, yanked on the courthouse doors. Locked. My palms slipped on the brass handles. The footsteps grew louder, closer, echoing against the brick buildings. I was cornered. And then, light. Not lightning, but headlights. A pair of them, cutting through the square, attached to a rusted RV barreling around the corner. It screeched to a halt in front of me, door flying open. "Get in!" someone shouted. I didn't think. I ran. Hands grabbed me, yanked me inside. The door slammed. The RV lurched forward, tires squealing as it plowed through the crowd. I braced against the counter, breath ragged, staring out the window as wet faces slid past, untouched by impact, parting like water around the vehicle. The driver was an old man, beard matted, eyes wild, hands gripping the wheel with white-knuckled strength. "Damn fool," he muttered. "You don't stop in Dalhart, not if you smell the rain." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. What the hell is happening?" He didn't answer, just kept driving, eyes fixed on the road ahead, muttering under his breath. I glanced around the RV. It was cluttered, filthy, every surface covered in old maps and notes. Strings of Polaroids dangled from the cabinets, each one a photo of an empty street, a silent house, a figure in the distance blurred by water. And on every photo, scrawled in black marker, rain. The old man gunned the engine, swerving onto back roads, weaving between fields that stretched empty under the endless blue sky. My heart wouldn't slow. My brain couldn't keep up. Finally, when the town lights shrank in the mirrors, he spoke again. You got out lucky. Most don't. I swallowed, my voice barely working. What are they? His jaw clenched. Don't know. Don't want to know. All I know is they ain't alive, not the way we are. They're caught, stuck. The town, the people, the storm that never breaks. Been like that for years. I stared at him. Years? Then why is the town still there? Why doesn't anyone? He cut me off with a bark of bitter laughter. Because you can't see it unless it wants you to. Dalhart's still on the map. Folks drive through every day. But every so often, someone like you, storm chasers, drifters, folks chasing things they don't understand, they smell the rain. And once you smell it, it ain't a town anymore. It's a trap. I sank onto the torn vinyl bench, the RV rattling around me. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Why me? The old man didn't look at me. Ask yourself, what are you running from? What storm are you chasing? I opened my mouth, closed it again. Because he wasn't wrong. Storm chasing had always been more than science for me. I chased storms because they mirrored the chaos I carried inside, the grief I never dealt with, the emptiness I filled with sirens and lightning. But I hadn't expected the storm to look back. The old man drove in silence for miles. Fields blurred. The smell faded little by little until only dust and sagebrush remained. When the sun dipped low, he pulled off on a dirt road, parking the RV beside a crumbling windmill. He cut the engine, finally turning to face me. You can get out here, he said. I blinked. Here? There's nothing for miles. He nodded. That's the point. Walk south. You'll hit the highway by dawn. Don't look back. Don't talk about Dalhart to anyone who hasn't smelled the rain. They'll just think you're crazy. I stared at him. What about you? He gave a tired smile. I go back. Always do. Someone has to pull the lucky ones out. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but something in his eyes told me there were no answers left to give. Just survival. So I stepped out. The RV door slammed. When I turned, headlights were already dwindling into the dark, back toward the town that shouldn't exist. I stood there alone, wind tugging at my jacket, the sky above me still flawless and empty. And for the first time that day, I realized I couldn't smell the rain anymore. But even now, years later, sometimes I'll catch it. In a grocery store parking lot after weeks without storms, on a dry highway under a cloudless noon. That sharp, impossible smell, and when I do, I freeze. Because I know somewhere, not far, Dalhart is waiting, and next time, I might not get out. I didn't tell anyone about Dalhart at first. How could I? To my colleagues in storm chasing, I'd sound delusional. To meteorologists, I'd be a fraud. To my family, what little I had left, I'd just be confirming what they already suspected, that chasing storms had finally broken me. So I buried it. I went back to chasing, logging reports, even getting my name in local news clips when a tornado skimmed a cattle yard. But something inside me had shifted, because every time I rolled down a highway under blue skies, I found myself sniffing the air, hunting for that smell. The smell I told myself I never wanted to smell again. And then one day, I did. It was nearly 2 years later. I was driving south of Amarillo, chasing a promising system moving up from New Mexico. The models said strong convection. The air said nothing special. But then, cutting through the leather of the truck seats and the stale coffee, I smelled it again. Rain. Sharp, metallic, clean. Impossible. My hands froze on the wheel. My pulse spiked. The memory of damp faces, of eyes that didn't blink, of the woman's mouth opening to pour out rain, it all surged back so violently that I nearly swerved into the ditch. I pulled over, gasping, telling myself it was a trick. Maybe there had been a drizzle an hour ago. Maybe the scent had clung in the ditches. But no, the asphalt was dry, the sky empty. And when I checked my rearview mirror, I saw him, the old man, standing on the shoulder 100 yards behind me, dust swirling around his boots, same matted beard, same wild eyes. But this time he didn't look like a rescuer. He looked like he'd been waiting. I blinked, and he was gone. I sat there until the sun dipped low, trembling in the cab, before finally driving home without chasing a single cloud. After that, I stopped chasing altogether. I sold the gear, shut down my weather feeds, and told myself I was retired. But storms didn't stop finding me. And neither did the smell. It came in odd places, walking across a Walmart parking lot in Lubbock, halfway through mowing the lawn, even once in the sterile air of a hospital waiting room. Always faint, always gone before I could pin it down. But each time I thought of Dalhart, and each time I wondered if I'd really escaped. I tried to research. Dalhart's history turned up nothing unusual. Railroads, ranching, Dust Bowl hardship, feedlots, census data matched, weather records matched. But when I dug deeper, looking for storm reports, for flood history, I found gaps, whole stretches of records missing or mislabeled, reports of flash floods in years when rainfall was nearly zero. I reached out to a contact at the National Weather Service, an old classmate. When I asked him if Dalhart had ever logged unusual weather, he laughed. Dalhart? Man, that's the driest place on earth. They barely get 15 inches a year. I didn't argue, but I couldn't let it go. That's how obsession starts. Not with thunderclaps, but with silences, with the questions no one else notices. And the question that haunted me most was this. If Dalhart was a trap, why me? The old man had asked what I was running from. At the time, I'd brushed it off. But the more I sat with it, the more I knew the answer. I'd been running from the day my brother died. He was the one who'd taught me to chase storms in the first place. We were kids in Oklahoma, climbing on the roof just to watch the skies boil green, but one chase went wrong. He was 22, I was 19. The tornado touched down faster than the radar suggested, and we were in the wrong place, in the wrong county, in the wrong damn car. I crawled out of the wreck. He didn't. After that, I chased harder, as if I could meet the same sky that killed him and force it to acknowledge me, to give me back something it had taken. And maybe Dalhart smelled that on me. Maybe Dalhart waits for people with storms inside them. That thought gnawed at me until I couldn't take it anymore. I told myself I'd put it to rest. Go back. See for myself if it was real or if my mind had spun a nightmare into a myth. So one August morning, I packed the truck and drove west. No radar this time. No cameras. Just me, the highway, and the smell I swore I didn't want but couldn't stop chasing. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. Dry heat, windless, cattle feedlots baking under the sun. And then, there it was. Subtle at first, then strong. Rain. So sharp it made my teeth ache. The GPS said Dalhart was 20 minutes away. My pulse climbed with every mile. I expected to see the old green road sign again, but I didn't. The highway markers passed like normal until the GPS suddenly froze. When it blinked back, I wasn't 20 minutes out. I was already there, Main Street. Empty. The same flower print woman outside the grocery, the same kids at the crosswalk, the same diner with its buzzing neon, like 2 years had never passed. I killed the engine and stepped out. The smell swallowed me whole. The same dust underfoot, the same blank stares turning in unison. I told myself not to engage. Just look. Observe. Prove it was real, then leave. But the second I thought that, a voice drifted from behind me. You're late. I spun. It was the boy, same dripping hair, same hollow voice. I wanted to run, but something in me, grief, defiance, self-destruction, made me stay. What do you want from me? I shouted. The boy blinked, and for the first time his expression shifted. Not blank. Sad. We don't want anything, he said. We just wait. My throat tightened. For what? For the storm that never came. Behind him the courthouse clock ticked once. The hands moved. 4:12 slid to 4:13. The air shifted. Not wind, pressure, heavy pressing like the seconds before a tornado drops. The townsfolk all lifted their heads together as if hearing thunder I couldn't. Then I did hear it. Not footsteps, not knocking, but rolling, distant thunder. I looked up. The flawless blue sky was gone. Clouds towered, black and green, boiling fast, building too fast. Lightning forked inside them without striking the ground. The townsfolk raised their arms, faces tilted upward. Water began to pour from their mouths, spilling down their chins, soaking the ground in streams that evaporated instantly into the dry dirt. The boy stepped closer. Stay. When it breaks, we'll be free. The storm above split open. Rain hammered down, but not like any rain I'd seen. Each drop hit the ground and vanished, leaving dust untouched. It was falling, but it wasn't landing. I staggered back, choking, the smell overwhelming, the roar deafening. The boy's hand reached for mine, cold and wet and desperate. I ran. I don't know how I made it out. My memory fractures. Streets bending, buildings blurring, lightning chasing me like claws. The last thing I remember is collapsing against my truck miles away, gasping in the dry night air, the sky above clear as glass. Dalhart was gone. No road sign, no GPS glitch, just open highway stretching into darkness. That was 5 years ago. I've never gone back. I've never told anyone, until now. But sometimes when storms roll across the panhandle, I'll hear it under the thunder. Not wind, not rain, but voices. Dozens of them in unison calling from a storm that never lands. And every so often when I dream, I see the boy, his hand outstretched. His lips mouthing the words over and over. You're late. It's been years now, but I still live with Dalhart. I don't talk about it to family. I don't mention it to old storm chaser friends. If someone asks why I quit, I just shrug and say I got tired or that I couldn't afford the gear anymore. It's easier than the truth, because the truth isn't something people want to hear. The truth is that there are places storms go and never leave. Places caught in loops, waiting for someone reckless enough to smell the rain. And once you've been there, you carry it with you. I notice it in small ways. I can't sit in a diner without staring at the booths too long, waiting to see if the food on the plates will move. I can't walk into a courthouse without glancing at the clock hands to see if they're stuck. Sometimes I wake up at night and the whole house smells like wet pavement, though outside the desert air is bone dry. That's when I know Dalhart hasn't let me go. I tried for a while to live normally. I took a job teaching basic meteorology at a community college. My students asked about tornadoes, about lightning myths, about hailstones the size of baseballs. I answered. I kept my voice steady. But every time I pulled up radar sweeps, I half expected the software to lock, to blink, to place me right back in that square. I couldn't escape it, so I started keeping records. Not storm reports anymore, but smell logs. Every time I caught the impossible scent of rain on dry days, I wrote it down, where I was, what time, how strong it was. The first year it happened 6 times, the second year 11. By the 4th year I'd stopped counting. And then came the voices. Not out loud, not at first, just dreams. I'd be standing in an empty town square, sky blue, courthouse clock ticking 4:12, then the sound of footsteps, hundreds of them in unison, closing in. I'd wake drenched in sweat, ears ringing as though I'd been standing in a downpour. But last winter, it wasn't just a dream. I was driving back from visiting family in Oklahoma, taking a back road through the panhandle when the truck radio fuzzed. At first, I thought it was interference, but then, through the static, I heard words. You're late. I nearly drove into the ditch. I yanked the radio cord free, but the words kept coming, faint but steady, as if the speakers themselves had nothing to do with it. You're late. I pulled over on the shoulder, heart hammering, scanning the fields. Nothing but flat dirt, barbed wire fences, and the endless horizon. But the air smelled like rain. I didn't stick around to see what would follow. That night, I lay awake wondering how many others had smelled it. How many had driven through Dalhart without meaning to? How many had not come back? That thought won't leave me, because the old man, the one who pulled me out, he said most don't make it. So what happens to them? That's the question that keeps me awake. The boy's words circle in my head. We just wait. Wait for what? Freedom? An ending? A storm that can finally land? Or are they waiting for someone like me to take their place? I'll never know, and I'm not sure I want to. But here's what I can tell you, if you've listened this far. When you're out in the panhandle, under skies so wide they make you feel small, you'll know the smell of rain when it's real. You'll see the storm on the horizon, darkening, building, a thing you can measure and track. But if the sky is clear, if the air is dry, and you smell that wet mineral scent anyway, don't stop. Don't turn toward it. Don't tell yourself you're just curious, because once you do, you'll see them. The faces that don't blink, the mouths that pour water instead of words, the boy who tells you you're late, and maybe, just maybe, you'll stay. I've made peace with the fact that no one will believe me. This isn't a story people want in their heads. We prefer disasters that end cleanly with survivors and footage and headlines. Dalhart doesn't give you that. It gives you silence. It gives you the smell of a storm that never breaks. But I believe in leaving warnings. So if someday you're driving west of Amarillo and your GPS glitches and the highway feels longer than it should, if you smell rain on dry dirt strong enough to make your teeth ache, keep driving. Don't slow. Don't wave. Don't look for a diner with a buzzing sign, because if you see it, Dalhart, the town will see you back, and it doesn't let go easily. I know, because even now, years later, as I sit here speaking into this recorder, my window is open to the Texas night. The air is dry, the stars are sharp, but the smell of rain is pouring into this room, and outside, on the road, I hear footsteps. I never used to think much about exits on the interstate. They were just markers along the way, anonymous numbers tied to invisible towns and back roads. Some led to truck stops buzzing with life, some to fast food chains glowing against the night. But exit 19 was different. I don't even remember now why I took it. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was instinct, or maybe something wanted me to pull off that road. It was late September, one of those long-haul nights where the hum of the RV had blurred my sense of time. My wife, Carrie, was dozing in the passenger seat, and our dog, Jasper, was curled up at her feet. We had left North Carolina that morning, aiming for a campground outside Nashville, but I knew we weren't going to make it before midnight. The dashboard clock glowed 11:14 when I saw the green highway sign, Exit 19, gas, food, lodging. It was perfect timing. The fuel gauge needle was sinking into red, and I told myself this was just luck. Pull off, fill up, stretch our legs. I eased the RV onto the off-ramp. The highway disappeared behind us, swallowed by darkness. At first it looked normal enough. The exit curved around a stand of trees, and in the distance I thought I saw the faint glow of a gas station canopy. I could almost imagine the hiss of the pump, the clatter of a late-night attendant stocking the cooler. But as I drew closer, the light seemed to shift. It wasn't fluorescent, not the way gas stations usually glowed. It flickered, soft and uneven, like the flame of a lantern. Carrie stirred awake and rubbed her eyes. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice groggy. "Exit 19, I said. "Should be a gas station up ahead." But as we crested the rise, I saw there was no gas station. Just a cracked asphalt lot, weeds crawling through the seams, and a single rusted light pole swaying in the night breeze. The flickering glow I had mistaken for a canopy lamp was a broken bulb, sparking in fits and starts. Beyond it, the lot stretched into shadow, the outlines of what might have once been a service station now reduced to a skeletal frame of metal beams and graffiti-scrawled walls. I slowed the RV. "That's strange," I muttered. "There's nothing here," Carrie said, leaning forward, squinting at the emptiness. The dog gave a low whine, shifting uneasily against her legs. Still, I pulled into the lot. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I parked for a minute, we'd find another station further down the road. Maybe I just needed to stop moving. The tires crunched on gravel as I steered into the cracked pavement. The headlights cut across the building's remains, shattered windows, a door dangling from one hinge, and spray paint spelling words I couldn't read, smeared like black scars. The air felt heavier here, damp and metallic, carrying the faint stench of old gasoline mixed with mildew. I switched the engine off. Instantly, the silence rushed in, dense and unnatural. No crickets, No frogs, no distant trucks roaring down the highway, just stillness. "Let's not stay here," Carrie said quickly. She had a tightness in her voice I didn't like. "Just a minute," I replied, though my own chest felt tight too. "Let me check the map, see if there's another stop nearby." I flicked on the overhead light and reached for my phone. No signal. I tried the GPS unit on the dash. It froze, then blinked, then showed nothing but a blank grid. That was when I heard it. A sound, faint at first, drifting from the darkness beyond the ruined station. A hollow tapping, steady and deliberate like knuckles rapping wood. Tap, tap, tap. Carrie sat upright. "Did you hear that?" I didn't answer. My hand hovered over the ignition key. I was telling myself it could have been anything, a loose sign banging in the wind, an animal shifting debris, but it was too measured, too precise. The tapping stopped. For a long moment, the silence was complete again. I wanted to leave, but my body seemed rooted, frozen by something I couldn't name. My eyes were drawn toward the skeletal frame of the old building. It looked different in the broken light. Taller somehow, leaning forward, its jagged windows reflecting the dim bulb like eyes catching fire. Jasper whined again, then growled, a low rumble deep in his throat. He stood up, ears pricked, and stared toward the shadows. That was when the tapping started again. Louder this time. Closer. Tap. 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 I turned the key. The engine roared back to life, and relief surged through me. "We're leaving," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Carrie nodded quickly, holding Jasper close. I shifted into reverse, backing out of the lot. The headlights swept across the ruined station one last time, and in that flash of light, I swear I saw movement. A figure, pale and thin, standing in the doorway. Then the darkness swallowed it. We didn't speak as I pulled back onto the ramp. My hands were clammy on the wheel, my heart slamming against my ribs. The highway came into view, empty and endless. I pressed the accelerator, eager to put distance between us and exit 19. But the strange thing was, the interstate didn't look right anymore. The road stretched ahead in a straight line, flanked by endless rows of trees. No signs, no mile markers, no headlights from other cars, just the narrow strip of asphalt cutting through black forest. I checked the clock again, 11:14, the same as before. "That's not possible," I whispered. "What?" Carrie asked. "The time. It hasn't changed." She looked at the dashboard, then back at me. Her face had gone pale. Maybe it's broken. But I knew it wasn't. The clock ticked fine earlier. Something was wrong, very wrong. The RV's headlights barely pierced the darkness now, as if the night itself was thickening around us. My pulse pounded in my ears, and the steering wheel felt heavy in my hands. I kept expecting to see another exit, another sign, but mile after mile slid by in silence. Then, another sound. This time, not tapping. A whisper, faint, curling through the cabin like breath against glass. I couldn't make out words, but I knew it came from the back of the RV. Carrie stiffened. "Did you hear that?" Jasper barked, sharp and frantic. I forced myself to look in the rearview mirror. For a split second, in the dim reflection of the RV's cabin lights, I saw something move down the narrow hallway that led to the sleeping area. A shadow, gliding just out of sight. My throat went dry. "We're not alone," Carrie whispered, and in that moment, I believed her. I gripped the wheel tighter, every nerve screaming at me to keep my eyes forward, but curiosity dragged my gaze back to the rearview mirror. The hallway behind us looked empty again, just the narrow strip of carpet, the built-in cabinets, the shadowy doorway to the sleeping area. But I knew what I saw. Something had been there, moving, shifting, as though it belonged. Carrie sat rigid in the passenger seat, her fingers gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles glowed white. "Don't stop. Don't pull over. Just keep driving," she whispered, like speaking too loud might stir something in the dark. The highway stretched endlessly ahead. My headlights caught only the double yellow lines before they were swallowed into black. It felt like the road was unspooling beneath us, but leading nowhere, as if exit 19 had thrown us into a loop outside of time. I pressed harder on the gas. The RV groaned, engine straining, but the speedometer refused to climb past 55. That was when Jasper lunged to his feet, hackles raised, and barked at the hallway again. His teeth snapped the air, saliva spraying the dashboard. His eyes, usually soft and brown, were fixed on the darkness like he could see something we couldn't. "Stop it, boy," Carrie tried to calm him, but her own voice cracked. And then we heard it, a slow, deliberate scrape, the sound of fingernails dragging along the RV's wong, steady, unhurried. The noise started near the back and worked its way forward, right along the thin paneling that separated us from the night. Jasper's barks turned to frantic howls. My chest tightened so hard I thought my ribs might splinter. Something was outside, or worse, inside. I slammed the high beams on, desperate to break the darkness. For a heartbeat, the road ahead lit up brighter, the trees stark and skeletal against the light. And in that stark glow, just beyond the beam's reach, I swore I saw them. Dozens of pale shapes standing in the tree line. They weren't moving. They weren't animals. They just stood there, tall and still, their faces, or what I thought were faces, turned toward the road. And then the lights flickered and went out. We were plunged into total darkness. Carrie gasped, clutching my arm. The RV's engine sputtered, coughed, then caught again, but the headlights stayed dead. I could barely see the faint glow of the dashboard. My hands fumbled across the controls, trying to reset the lights. Nothing. "Don't stop," Carrie whispered again, but her voice trembled with something close to prayer. The scraping sound came again, this time right at my side. Nails or claws dragging along the driver's window. Slow. Testing. I refused to look. I kept my eyes on the black road, steering blind, every muscle screaming with the urge to slam the brakes. But something deeper told me stopping would be worse. Stopping would mean letting it, whatever it was, catch up. The whispers returned, this time clearer. A chorus, low and overlapping, like 100 voices murmuring beneath the breath of wind. They slithered through the cabin, weaving words I couldn't quite understand but felt in my bones. Words that pressed cold against my chest, words that tugged at the edge of thought. Carrie pressed her hands over her ears, rocking slightly. "Make it stop," she whispered, her voice cracking into sobs. "Please, make it stop." I swallowed hard, fighting the panic clawing at me. "We just keep going," I told her, though I wasn't sure who I was convincing, her or me. The RV lurched suddenly, as though we'd struck something in the road. I gripped the wheel, swerving, but there was nothing ahead. The tires screamed against asphalt, and the whole frame shuddered like something heavy had landed on the roof. Thud. Jasper barked wildly, scrambling from window to window, tail between his legs. Above us, footsteps pounded, slow, heavy, deliberate. Each step echoed through the ceiling, shaking dust from the vents. Someone, or something, was walking across the roof of our RV. I couldn't breathe. My vision tunneled, my body screamed to stop, to get out, to look, but I forced the accelerator down harder. The engine roared in protest. 55, still 55, no more, no less. And then, as suddenly as it began, the footsteps stopped. The whispers fell silent. The scraping ceased. For a moment, the only sound was the strained wheeze of the engine and Carrie's quiet sobs. My eyes darted from mirror to mirror. Nothing. Just the endless, starless dark swallowing the road. Then the clock on the dashboard blinked. 11:15. Just 1 minute later, but it felt like an hour had passed. Carrie wiped her face with shaking hands. "We have to get off this road. Anywhere. Please." I nodded, though my stomach twisted. I didn't know if there was anywhere to get off, but as if the road had heard her, a sign appeared up ahead, glowing faintly in the dark. Exit 19. Gas. Food. Lodging. My mouth went dry. "We just came from there," I whispered. The sign loomed closer, green and reflective, identical to the one I'd seen an eternity ago. The arrow pointed right. "No," Carrie said firmly. "Don't. Just keep straight. We're not going back." But as the off-ramp approached, something strange happened. The wheel tugged in my hands, pulling right on its own, like the RV itself wanted to turn. I fought it, muscles burning, veins straining in my arms. The steering wheel writhed like something alive, dragging me toward the exit. "Hold it!" Carrie screamed. Jasper lunged forward, barking, his paws scrabbling against the console. I gritted my teeth, veins throbbing, and wrenched the wheel left with everything I had. The RV swerved violently, tires squealing, and for a terrifying second I thought we'd flip. But then, the pull released. We stayed on the highway. The off-ramp slid by in the mirrors, shrinking into darkness. Silence hung in the cabin again, heavy and suffocating. Carrie was shaking, her breath ragged. Jasper collapsed back onto the floor, whining softly. My own arms trembled from the effort of holding the wheel. I tried to calm myself, to force logic into the chaos. Maybe the steering column was failing. Maybe I was hallucinating from exhaustion. Maybe, and then I saw it. Up ahead, another green sign, identical to the first. Exit 19, gas, food, lodging. I slammed the brakes. The RV screeched, tires burning rubber, and we lurched forward in our seats. The sign loomed above us, glowing the same impossible promise. We were trapped, caught in some loop that kept leading us back to the same place. Carrie covered her mouth with her hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We're never getting out," she whispered. The dog growled again, ears pinned back. The hair along my arms stood on end. Somewhere deep in the trees lining the road, I thought I saw them again. Those pale shapes, watching silently, waiting. And for the first time that night, I wasn't sure if we were being hunted or herded. I sat there in the middle of the interstate, foot pressed hard on the brake, hands slick with sweat against the steering wheel. The green sign loomed overhead, glowing faintly as though it had been waiting for us all along. The same sign. The same promise of gas, food, lodging. The same trap. Carrie's sobs quieted into a strange stillness, like she had nothing left to give. She stared out the windshield with wide, vacant eyes. Jasper pressed close against her, ears low, trembling. I forced myself to release the brake. The RV crept forward. "We keep going," I whispered, though my voice sounded hollow in my own ears. Carrie didn't respond. The road stretched on in that suffocating blackness. No stars, no moon, just the thin beams of my dead headlights, which flickered back to life for a moment, then fizzled again into uselessness. It didn't matter. The road seemed to glow faintly on its own, the double yellow lines faintly illuminated as if leading us somewhere we weren't meant to choose. My throat tightened. The idea of control felt like an illusion now. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds, maybe hours. My mind couldn't hold on to time anymore. Then in the distance, I saw it again. Another sign, green, reflective, the same words. Exit 19, gas, food, lodging. I slowed, shaking my head. This isn't real. This can't be real. Carrie finally spoke, her voice raw, broken. "It wants us to turn. It's trying to wear us down." I glanced at her, startled by the clarity in her tone. She met my eyes, her face pale but certain. "If we keep refusing, it'll find another way. It's not the exit that's the trap. It's us." Her words sank like stones into my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean," she hesitated, trembling. "I mean, we already turned once. Don't you remember? We took exit 19 and now we're still here." I wanted to argue. I wanted to cling to logic, to deny it, but deep down I knew she was right. No matter what we did, we were still caught in exit 19. The RV creaked as if under strain, the cabinets rattling with each bump in the road. And then, from the rear, a soft thud, like something dropping lightly onto the floor. Jasper barked, spinning toward the hallway. His claws scraped the vinyl as he lunged, teeth bared at the shadows. Carrie gasped, clutching my arm. "Don't stop," she begged. But I couldn't stop my eyes from flicking to the rearview mirror. For the briefest moment, I saw it, something crouched in the hallway. Thin limbs elongated, folding in on themselves like a spider's legs. Its face, if it had a face, was just a pale blur, features half-formed, as though the darkness hadn't decided what it wanted to look like yet. It moved, not walking, gliding, dragging itself forward inch by inch, silent except for the faint rasp of nails against the wall. My stomach turned to ice. I whipped my gaze back to the road, refusing to give it more attention, but my hands shook violently on the wheel. "Carrie," my voice cracked. "There's something in here with us." She shut her eyes, tears spilling. "I know." The RV groaned again, and the air inside thickened, heavy like the press of humidity before a storm. I felt it crawling across my skin, a weightless pressure like fingers brushing my neck. I fought the urge to slam the brakes and run. Where would we go? Out into the endless night where pale shapes watched from the trees. Jasper barked again, lunging at the hallway. His whole body bristled. And then silence. No scraping, no movement, just silence. I risked a glance in the mirror. The hallway was empty. Carrie let out a shaky breath. Maybe it's gone. But I knew better. Things like that didn't leave. Not until they got what they wanted. We drove on. The silence grew louder, pressing on my eardrums until I thought I might scream. I realized then what had been missing all along, the sound of the RV itself. The steady hum of the tires, the low growl of the engine, gone. My hands gripped the wheel, but there was no vibration, no feedback. We weren't driving anymore. We were just moving. "Do you feel that?" I whispered. Carrie nodded slowly. "Like we're floating." The road beneath us seemed to unravel, the yellow lines stretching endlessly, shifting slightly as if they weren't painted but alive, writhing under our tires. I blinked hard, trying to clear the illusion, but when I opened my eyes again, the road was gone. We were drifting forward into nothing. No asphalt, no trees, just blackness in every direction, stretching infinite and empty. The dashboard lights still glowed, but outside, there was nothing. No ground, no sky. Carrie covered her mouth, a muffled sob escaping. Jasper whimpered, curling against her legs. "I can't." My voice broke. "I can't even tell if we're moving anymore." And then, out of the void, a single light appeared ahead. Small at first, flickering faintly, a gas station canopy. The same one I had seen when we first took exit 19. My heart hammered. The skeletal building, the swaying pole, the broken bulb, all of it waited for us in the distance, just as it had before. We were back, but this time there was no road leading to it. Just the RV floating forward through the void, carrying us straight toward the station, whether I touched the wheel or not. Carrie shook her head violently. No, don't go there. Please, don't let it take us there." I twisted the wheel, stomping on the pedal, but nothing responded. The RV glided like it was caught in a current. The light grew brighter, closer. The skeletal walls loomed taller, and then I saw movement inside. Figures, dozens of them, pale, thin, shifting slowly in the broken shadows of the ruined station. Their faces turned toward us, blank and hollow, as though they had been waiting. Carrie screamed, burying her face against Jasper's fur. My pulse roared in my ears, my vision narrowing as the RV drifted closer and closer until I could see them clearly. Not strangers, not monsters. People. A man in a trucker's cap, a woman in a floral blouse, a boy holding a stuffed bear. Their faces were pale, eyes dark, bodies trembling slightly in the flicker of the light. Travelers, like us. But their expressions were wrong, empty, drained, as if all hope had been pulled from their bones. And as we drew closer, I realized every one of them was mouthing the same words in perfect unison. Exit 19, exit 19. Their voices blended into the same whispers we'd heard in the RV, echoing, growing louder, a chant that pressed into my skull. Carrie sobbed into her hands. "We're already dead," she cried. "We never left. We're already theirs." I shook my head violently, refusing to accept it. No, we're not done. We're not giving in. But the gas station loomed closer, the figures pressing against the shattered windows, their mouths moving faster, louder. Exit 19, exit 19, exit 19. I gripped the wheel even though it did nothing and screamed back at the void. No. And just like that, the lights went out. Total black. Silence. When my vision cleared, the RV was parked engine dead. We were sitting in the cracked asphalt lot of the ruined gas station, the same broken bulb flickering overhead, the same weeds crawling through the pavement, and this time I knew we hadn't imagined it. We were inside the loop, and the only way out was to face what waited for us inside. The engine had died so completely that the silence felt wrong. Not just absence of sound, an active silence, pressing in as though the air itself wanted to smother us. The cracked lot spread wide beneath us, shimmering faintly in the broken light of that one bulb. The ruined gas station crouched ahead, its hollow windows staring back. I gripped the wheel, though it was useless now. The key turned, but the ignition only clicked. Once, twice, then nothing. Carrie's breath came in shallow, uneven bursts. "Don't get out," she would, clutching Jasper so tight he whined. "Please, don't get out." "I won't," I said quickly, though the words felt like a lie. Every part of me screamed to run, to leave the RV, to break suffocating air. Staying inside felt as dangerous as stepping out. Then tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed against the RV's wall, the same deliberate rhythm as before. I turned toward the passenger window just as 3 pale fingers curled over the glass. Long, too long, knuckles bending at angles that made my stomach lurch. Carrie shrieked, pressing back against her seat. Jasper erupted into frantic barks, pawing at the door, teeth flashing at the intruder he couldn't reach. The fingers withdrew, leaving behind streaks of moisture, like condensation, but darker, heavier, dripping down the pane. I jumped from my seat, yanking the curtain shut over the window. My chest heaved. My hands shook, and then from the rear of the RV, the door latch rattled. Once, twice, slow, testing. They were trying to get in. I pressed my back against the door, holding the handle down with my weight. "Stay with me," I told Carrie, though my voice broke. "No matter what, stay with me." Her eyes brimmed with tears. She nodded, hugging Jasper close. For a long moment, the rattling stopped. The silence thickened again. I almost let myself believe it was over, until the bulb outside flared. The ruined station glowed with sudden searing brightness, every jagged edge outlined in white light. And in that glare, I saw them. Dozens of figures stood in the lot now, circling the RV. Their bodies were thin, almost skeletal, clothes tattered like they'd been wearing them for years. Faces pale, hollow-eyed, mouths still moving in that same unending chant. Exit 19, exit 19, exit 19. The sound wasn't spoken, it was inside my head, reverberating against my skull, drilling into me. Carrie clutched her ears, sobbing. "Make it stop!" I couldn't. God help me, I couldn't. The figures pressed closer, hands slapping softly against the RV's walls, fingers dragging across the metal like nails on chalkboard. Jasper barked himself hoarse, lunging against Carrie's grip. And then I heard the door click. Not the back door this time, the main one. The lock turned. I spun around just in time to see the handle move down, the latch giving way. "No," I roared, throwing my shoulder into it, slamming it shut again. I fumbled for the lock, twisting it back into place with shaking hands. But the pressure remained on the other side, steady, unrelenting, as though dozens of hands pushed together. The walls groaned. The glass quivered in the windows. The RV was being crushed. It had squeezed by the sheer weight of them pressing against it. And then the voices stopped, all at once. The silence that followed was worse than the chanting. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. The air felt charged, humming faintly. Carrie whispered, "Why did they stop?" I didn't answer, because I knew. It was waiting. For me. The RV door rattled one last time, then stilled. Slowly, deliberately, the handle released, and in the silence a thought pressed into my head. Not my own voice, not my own words. "Come inside." I staggered back, clutching my skull. The whisper wasn't sound. It was in me. Carrie's eyes widened. "Don't listen." But it was too late. The compulsion burrowed deep, twisting my thoughts. I had to go out there. I had to step inside the gas station. I didn't know why, only that resisting felt like trying to hold my breath against a rising tide. "I can't." My voice cracked. "Carrie, I can't fight it." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Yes, you can. Look at me. Look at me." Her eyes locked on mine, raw with desperation. For a moment, her grip steadied me. Her presence tethered me. But then outside, the bulb flared brighter still, searing white, and from the doorway of the ruined station, something moved. A figure, not pale and hollow like the rest. This one was sharp, defined, its features obscured but its posture commanding. It stepped into the light, tall and thin, its shadow stretching across the lot toward us. The pressure in my skull doubled. "Come inside." I stumbled toward the door, teeth gritted against the force. Carrie screamed, clinging to my arm, Jasper barking wildly at my heels. "Don't," she cried. "It's not you. It's them. Don't let them take you." But my hand lifted anyway, against my will, reaching for the lock. My muscles trembled as though strings pulled them from above. I fought it with everything I had. My chest burned, my head pounded, blood roared in my ears. Then another voice cut through. Not Carrie's, not mine. A child's voice, high, trembling, right behind me. Help us. I spun, heart hammering, and there in the narrow hallway of the RV stood a boy, no older than 10, his face pale, his clothes ragged, clutching a stuffed bear, one of them. But his eyes, God, his eyes, they weren't hollow, they were terrified, human. Help us, he whispered again, clutching the bear tighter. My hand fell from the lock, the pressure in my head wavered, flickering. Carrie gasped, staring at the boy. Jasper whined, confused but no longer barking. I sank to my knees, staring at the child. What do you mean? He looked past me toward the glowing station. Tears streaked his cheeks. His lips trembled. It won't let us leave. The words hit like ice water. He wasn't the trap. He was trapped too. Before I could speak again, the boy flickered. His form blurred, his outline dissolving like smoke. Then he was gone. But his words remained, echoing in the suffocating silence. It won't let us leave. The figure in the doorway stepped closer, its shadow stretching long, swallowing the RV whole. I realized then, whatever Exit 19 was, it wasn't just a place. It was a prison, and we'd just been sentenced. The boy's words clung to me like frost, biting deep into my chest long after he vanished. It won't let us leave. I stared at the spot where he'd stood in the narrow hallway, my mind swimming with questions I couldn't voice. Carrie knelt beside me, clutching my arm. Her face was pale, her lips trembling, but her grip was iron. You saw him too, right? Tell me you saw him. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I saw him. She let out a broken laugh, half relief, half despair. Then it's not just in our heads. Outside, the shadowed figure lingered in the ruined station doorway, waiting. Its patience was worse than its presence, like it knew we couldn't resist forever. Around it, the hollow-eyed shapes pressed closer, their chants swelling again in my skull. Exit 19, exit 19, exit 19. Jasper whined low, his body trembling against Carrie's legs. He wasn't barking anymore. Animals know when something is beyond barking at. My mind twisted in knots. The boy hadn't been part of them, not fully. His plea had been real, which meant the others weren't here by choice. They were trapped, and if I didn't figure out how, so would we. The pressure in my skull pulsed again, harder this time. My hand twitched toward the lock. The compulsion clawed deeper, urging me to step out, to give in, to join the circle. Carrie grabbed my wrist. She whispered fiercely, "Don't listen. You hear me? Don't listen." Her eyes burned into mine, fierce despite her fear. That fire steadied me for a moment, pulling me back from the brink. But I knew it couldn't last. Not forever. The thing in the doorway wasn't going to let go, and maybe, just maybe, the only way out was through. I think, my voice cracked. I think I have to go in there. Carrie shook her head violently. No, absolutely not. That's what it wants. You go out there, we lose you. Maybe, I admitted. My throat tightened. But if we stay here, we're done anyway. You heard the boy. Nobody leaves, not unless... Not unless what? I looked past her, out at the glowing ruin. The figure shifted slightly, its shadow writhing like it was made of smoke. The chanting drilled into me, louder with each breath. My ears rang. My chest felt like it was being crushed. Not unless someone breaks it. Carrie's grip trembled, but she didn't let go. Tears welled in her eyes. You can't save them. Don't you get it? This place doesn't play fair. It'll use anything, anyone to pull you in. Even that boy. Especially that boy. Her words cut deep. She might have been right. But I couldn't shake the look in his eyes, so human, so desperate. And I thought of all the exits I'd passed in my life, all the nameless places I'd ignored without a second thought. How many others had pulled off here, just like us, thinking they'd find gas in a bathroom? How many had never made it back? I couldn't accept that we were just next in line. The bulb above the station flared brighter, searing white. The figure stepped forward. The chant roared. My skull throbbed so hard I thought it would split. I staggered to my feet, clutching the handle. If I don't come back, I rasped, you take Jasper. You run. Don't look back. Carrie sobbed, shaking her head. Don't you dare. I pressed my forehead against hers for one fragile heartbeat. I love you. Her grip broke at last, her hands slipping from mine as if she already knew resistance was pointless. The lock clicked beneath my palm. The door swung open. The night air hit me like ice. Damp, metallic, heavy with the stench of old fuel and rot. The chanting surged, filling every corner of my head, vibrating in my teeth. I stepped down onto the cracked pavement. The figures closed in, their pale faces turning toward me, mouths moving in unison. Their eyes were bottomless, like pits carved into stone. They didn't lunge. They didn't grab me. They just waited, swaying faintly in the broken light, part of the chant that pressed me forward. The figure in the doorway raised one hand. A command. My body obeyed. Step by step, I moved across the lot. My feet scraped against the weeds, clawing through the cracks. The bulb above buzzed and flickered, casting shadows that danced and bent. My chest heaved with every breath, my heart pounding like it wanted to break free. As I neared the doorway, the smell grew stronger, gasoline and mildew, yes, but underneath, something worse, something coppery, metallic, blood. My knees buckled, but the compulsion drove me onward. The doorway loomed tall before me, jagged shards of glass still clinging to the frame. The figure stood inside, taller than I realized, its form shifting faintly, never fully solid. It radiated hunger. And then, just as I reached the threshold, I heard it again, the boy's voice, faint, urgent, from somewhere deeper inside. Don't stop walking. My breath caught. My head jerked toward the sound, straining to find him in the shadows. The figure in the doorway tilted its head as though amused. Its arm lowered, palm facing down, commanding me to kneel. The pressure slammed into me like a wave. My knees buckled, my spine bowed. The weight of it pressed me toward the ground, crushing, suffocating. But the boy's voice rose again, stronger this time. Not to it, past it. I fought to lift my head, every vein in my neck straining. The figure loomed closer, its face, or what should have been a face, stretching into nothingness. A blur of shifting features that wouldn't settle. The chanting grew deafening. My body screamed to surrender, to collapse, to give myself over, but my legs moved. One step, then another. Not into the figure, but through the doorway, past it. The compulsion cracked just enough for me to stagger forward into the dark interior of the station. The chanting faltered, just a little. The figure hissed, a sound like wind tearing through broken glass. I stumbled deeper into the ruin, my eyes adjusting to the dim flicker of light. The floor was littered with broken tiles, old shelves collapsed in heaps. The air reeked of gasoline and decay. And then from the far corner, a small shape emerged. The boy. He clutched his stuffed bear tight, his eyes wide with fear. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him, more children appeared. Boys, girls, different ages, different clothes, all pale and trembling. Their eyes flickered with faint light, some spark of humanity not yet swallowed. Dozens of them, trapped. Help us, the boy whispered again, his voice breaking. Please. The figure in the doorway screamed, a shrill, inhuman wail that rattled the broken glass and shook the walls. The children flinched, covering their ears. And I realized then what Exit 19 really was. It wasn't just a place. It was a cage. And the thing in the doorway was the jailer. The sound tore through me. That shriek wasn't made for human ears. It wasn't just noise. It was command, rage, despair, all tangled together. My chest vibrated with it. My teeth ached like they'd split in half. The children whimpered behind the boy, huddling closer in the shadows of the collapsed station. He gripped his bear and stared at me with desperate eyes. You came through. You made it past him. The figure filled the doorway now, stooping low, shoulders scraping both sides of the frame, as if the ruin itself was too small to contain it. The fluorescent light above popped, showering sparks. In the sudden dark, the figure glowed faintly, edges fraying like smoke caught in wind. My instinct screamed at me to run, to bolt deeper into the wreckage, to claw my way out the back, to get to Carrie and Jasper and never look back. But then I looked at the kids again, their faces hollow, thin, eyes ringed in gray. They weren't illusions. I knew it in my bones, and if I ran, I'd be leaving them here forever. I turned toward them, my voice trembling. How long have you been trapped? The boy shook his head. His lips barely moved. A long time. One of the girls, her hair stringy and matted with dust, whispered, "Since the cars stopped coming." My blood ran cold. Since the cars stopped coming. God only knew when that had been. The old signage, the wrecked pumps, the way the station looked like it hadn't drawn a customer in decades. Had they all been pulled off the road at different times, different years? Were they just collected one by one whenever someone's tire blew, whenever someone's tank hit empty? The figure's hiss deepened, the sound scraping across my ribs. Why me? I asked the boy. Why show me this? He swallowed hard, voice breaking. Because you still remember who you are. The others nodded slowly, their small faces flickering with faint hope. Hope so fragile it could shatter at any second. A blast of air roared through the doorway, knocking me forward. The figure had stepped fully inside. Its height bent the ceiling beams, wood splintering where its shoulders pressed. Its faceless head tilted in a jerky, unnatural twitch. The air grew colder, each breath stabbing my lungs like ice water. The chant outside swelled again. Exit 19, exit 19, exit 19. The boy's voice trembled. Don't let it mark you. Mark me? He lifted his bear higher as if shielding himself. That's how it keeps us. Once it marks you, you can't leave. You belong to it. My skin crawled. My hand went instinctively to my chest, half expecting to feel some burn already carved there. But nothing. Not yet. The figure stretched out a hand, long, impossibly long, its fingers like strands of smoke. They reached across the room, curling toward me. The children shrieked. No! The boy lunged forward, clutching my arm. His touch was cold but real. His eyes locked with mine. It wants you to kneel. Don't, ever, kneel. My knees shook under the crushing weight of its presence, the demand pressing into me like chains. My legs bent despite my will, joints screaming. My head dropped, vision tunneling. But then I thought of Carrie, her grip on my wrist. Her fierce whisper, don't listen. I grit my teeth and forced myself upright, every muscle shaking. Not tonight, I spat, my voice breaking. The figure hissed louder, the walls trembling around us. The roof above groaned as if the building itself couldn't withstand its fury. The children clung to one another, their wide eyes watching. The boy's voice pierced through the roar. Break the pump. What? The pump. He jabbed his finger toward the front of the station. That's where it drinks. That's how it holds us. My mind reeled. The pump. The rusted, broken hulk I'd walked past without a thought. Could it be true that the thing drew strength from the place itself, from the rusting bones of a station long dead? The figure lunged suddenly, its smoke fingers slamming down where I'd stood a second before. The tiles cracked, a burst of dust filling the air. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. My gaze darted to the pump outside, visible through the jagged glass of the doorway. The boy screamed again. Break it before it marks you. I didn't think. I ran. The thing shrieked, its limbs whipping out, smashing against the walls as I barreled past. The glass tore at my arms, but I didn't stop. My boots slammed the pavement, carrying me across the lot toward the skeletal remains of Pump 3. Behind me, the children wailed. The chant surged to a fever pitch, drilling into my skull. Exit 19. Exit 19. The figure followed, but slower now, as if the threshold bound it somehow. Smoke trailed from its arms, reaching, stretching, but it couldn't quite leave the ruin. Hope flared in my chest. I skidded to the pump, chest heaving. The metal was corroded, eaten through with rust. The nozzle lay half buried in weeds, but something pulsed inside it, a faint throb of light, like a heart beating. Without thinking, I grabbed the nozzle and yanked. The hose split with a shriek of tearing rubber, spilling thick black sludge onto the ground. The stench was unbearable, a mix of oil and rot. The pump screamed. Not metal, it screamed. The whole structure shook, that faint light flickering wildly. The chant outside faltered. The children cried out behind me, their voices rising in unison, "Keep going!" I slammed the nozzle against the pump casing again and again, sparks flying as rust gave way. The light inside flickered faster, sputtering. The figure shrieked, its faceless head snapping back, smoke pouring from its form like steam from boiling water. I brought the nozzle down one last time. The pump split open, the light bursting free in a blinding flare. The chant stopped. Silence. The figure convulsed in the doorway, its form collapsing inward, smoke shredding into tatters. With a final piercing wail, it imploded, vanishing into the dark. The air went still. I staggered back, dropping the ruined nozzle, my chest heaving. My ears rang with the echo of silence after endless noise. Then I heard them. The children. Their voices rose softly, not in pain, but in relief. When I turned, I saw them standing in the lot, their faces glowing faintly with pale light. One by one, they smiled, fragile, grateful. The boy held his bear close, his small frame trembling, but his eyes shone with something like peace. "Thank you," he whispered. His voice was clear, no longer warped with the echo of that place. The others joined him, murmuring in harmony. "Thank you." Their light brightened, swelling until I had to shield my eyes, and then just as quickly as they'd appeared, they were gone. The lot was empty. The station was silent. The pumps lay shattered, the doorway gaping, nothing inside but rot and ruin. I staggered back toward the RV, my body shaking. Carrie threw the door open before I reached it, eyes wide, tears streaking her face. "Are you?" Her voice broke as she pulled me inside, arms wrapping around me tight. Jasper barked once, tail thumping frantically against the floor. I collapsed into her, shaking uncontrollably. "It's gone," I whispered hoarsely. I think it's over." But as I said it, a thought crawled through my mind. The pump was broken, the figure was gone. But the exit sign, the green glow of exit 19, still burned out there on the highway, and something told me it wasn't finished. Carrie held on to me like she thought I might vanish if she let go. Her hands trembled against my back, her cheek pressed to my shoulder. Jasper whined, circling us, pawing at the floor. For a long time, we just sat there on the floor of the RV, listening to the faint tick of the cooling engine and the ragged sound of my breathing. Outside, the night was unnervingly still. No chant, no hiss, just quiet. When my heart slowed enough to form words, I pulled back slightly. "Carrie, we have to go, right now." She nodded, eyes wet, jaw set tight. She didn't ask questions, just climbed into the driver's seat while I slid into the passenger side, my hands shaking as I strapped in. The headlights carved into the dark as she turned the key. The engine roared to life, mercifully smooth. The road lay open before us, the cracked asphalt gleaming faintly under the beams. Carrie gripped the wheel like she was holding on to the last solid thing in the world. "Which way?" I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to drive anywhere but forward. But backward meant passing that ruined station again. And somehow I knew the road behind us would just bend back, swallowing itself. "East," I said hoarsely. "Just keep east." She pressed the pedal. The RV groaned, then surged forward. The road stretched ahead, endless, flanked by black fields and the faint silver thread of barbed wire fences. No houses, no signs of life. Just us, rolling through nothing. For a few miles, I let myself breathe. The tension in my chest eased slightly as the ruin fell away behind us. Carrie kept glancing at me, her lips pressed in a tight line, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. But then, after maybe 15 minutes, my stomach dropped. Up ahead, in the glow of our headlights, a shape appeared on the side of the road. A small green sign. I sat bolt upright. Exit 19. I blinked hard, shaking my head. No, 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 no. Carrie's knuckles whitened on the wheel. We didn't turn around. We didn't. The sign glowed as we approached, the number impossibly crisp against the peeling paint. 19. "Keep driving," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "Don't slow down, just keep going." She did. The RV roared past the sign, leaving it in the rear view. For a few blessed seconds, I dared to hope maybe it was just a coincidence. Then, in the distance ahead, another faint green glimmer. Exit 19. Carrie slammed the heel of her hand against the steering wheel, a broken sound tearing from her throat. "It's the same one. We're stuck." The air inside the cab grew colder. Jasper barked at the windshield, hackles rising. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing my breath to steady. The boy's words echoed in my skull. "Don't let it mark you." I pressed my palm to my chest, half afraid I'd feel something carved there. Nothing. Not yet. But if we kept circling, If we kept driving blind, "We have to stop," I said finally. Carrie snapped her head toward me. "Stop? Are you insane? If we stop? It's not about running anymore. That thing, whatever it was, the pump held it to us, but the exit. The exit is something else. It's the trap." Her eyes glistened with fear, but also with trust. After a long pause, she nodded once and eased the RV onto the shoulder. The engine idled, humming low, the only sound in the vast silence. I stepped out first, the night air hitting me like ice, my breath plumed white in the beam of the headlights. The highway stretched empty in both directions, but the green glow of the exit sign loomed ahead, pulsing faintly as if alive. Carrie joined me, arms wrapped tight around herself. "What now?" I shook my head. "I don't know." And then, faint at first, I heard it. A voice. Not the chanting, not the hiss, a child's voice. "Go back." I spun, scanning the dark. The sound drifted from the roadside ditch, low and broken. Carrie grabbed my sleeve. "Don't." But I couldn't help it. I stepped closer, peering into the shadows. There, crouched at the edge of the weeds, was the boy. The same boy. The bear clutched in his arms, eyes glinting faintly in the dark, but he wasn't glowing anymore. He looked real. "Go back," he whispered again, his voice cracked and hoarse. "It's not finished. Not for you." My stomach turned. "I broke the pump. I saw you leave." He shook his head slowly. "That was only the mouth. The road is still hungry." Behind me, Carrie whispered, "Don't listen to him." But my heart pounded with the weight of his words. The mouth. The road. "What do you want from us?" I whispered. His lips trembled. "Don't kneel. Don't feed it." Before I could answer, his figure flickered like static skipping across a screen, and he was gone. The ditch lay empty. Carrie's hand gripped mine so hard it hurt. "We're leaving. Right now." I nodded, though my insides twisted. We climbed back into the RV, slammed the doors, and peeled back onto the highway. The sign loomed again. Exit 19. Carrie's voice broke as she whispered, "It won't let us go." I stared ahead, my chest tight. The boy's words burned in my skull. "Don't feed it." And for the first time, I wondered if every mile we drove wasn't taking us closer to escape, but deeper into the trap. The RV's engine hummed steady beneath us, but every mile we drove was another twist in a maze I couldn't see. The headlights tore open the dark, yet nothing changed. The same cracked asphalt, the same endless fences, the same faint green glow that always appeared just ahead, waiting for us like a predator crouched in the grass. Exit 19. Carrie's breathing grew sharper with each pass, her knuckles fused white on the wheel. We're not stopping. We're not looking at it. We just keep going. But I could see the cracks forming in her resolve. Every time we passed the sign again, her shoulders flinched, her jaw clenched tighter, and her eyes darted to the side as though the green glow might leap through the window and drag her out. I wanted to believe her plan could work, that if we pushed hard enough, far enough, the loop would snap. But deep down, I already knew the truth. We weren't circling a road. The road was circling us. Jasper barked suddenly, sharp and panicked, lunging toward the windshield. His nails scraped the dash, his body rigid, ears pinned flat. Carrie gasped, nearly swerving. "What the hell?" "Something's out there," I muttered, pressing forward against my seatbelt, scanning the darkness. But there was nothing, no headlights, no figures, just the endless black of the fields and the faint stutter of the fence posts flying by. And then, faint first but growing stronger, came a sound I hadn't expected. Knocking. Not on the doors, not on the windows, from beneath us. 3 sharp raps, hollow against the RV's underbelly. I felt the vibration in my feet through the floor. Carrie let out a strangled sob. "It's under the road." The knocks came again. Louder this time. Faster, like knuckles beating frantically against a coffin lid. Jasper howled, claws skittering on the tile as he scrambled backward, retreating to the rear of the RV. Carrie slammed the pedal down, the engine roaring as the RV lurched forward. The speedometer needle climbed. 60, 70, 80. The frame rattled, dishes clinking in the cabinets, but the knocking didn't fade. It kept pace. I gripped the dash until my nails dug grooves into the plastic. "It's not chasing us, it's carrying us." Carrie shot me a wild look. What the hell does that mean? Before I could answer, the road itself shuddered. The RV bounced violently, the tires slamming against unseen cracks. But when I squinted through the windshield, the asphalt ahead looked smooth. Another shudder. Then another. The road was breathing. I pressed a shaking hand to the glass, staring at the faint undulations in the pavement as it rose and fell in unnatural rhythm like the slow expansion of a rib cage. "It's alive," I whispered. Carrie's face drained of color. The green glow appeared again ahead of us. Exit 19. She let out a scream and swerved hard, wrenching the wheel to the left, off the main lane and into the dark shoulder. The RV rattled across gravel, the beams of the headlights slicing wild arcs into the empty fields. The tires struck dirt. We plowed forward into the prairie, bouncing violently over scrub and weeds, dust billowing around us. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe we'd done it. Maybe breaking free from the asphalt was all it took. Then, out of the dust ahead, the beam of our headlights caught it. A green sign. Exit 19. Standing alone in the middle of the field. No road, no posts, just rising from the earth like a grave marker. Carrie slammed the brakes, the RV screeching to a halt. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. We sat there, frozen, staring at the impossible thing in front of us. The sign pulsed faintly, as if it had veins just under the surface, pumping with each beat of the unseen heart that seemed to shake the soil beneath us. Jasper whimpered from the back, pressing himself into the corner. My mouth went dry. It doesn't matter where we go. It'll always be there. Carrie's hands shook violently as she gripped the wheel, her lips moving without sound before the words finally broke free. "What does it want from us?" I swallowed hard, the boy's warning thundering in my head. "Don't feed it." I thought of the pump, the way it drank, the way the shadow pressed against the glass, greedy for release. "It wants us to give in," I said slowly, piecing it together as the thought formed. "It doesn't just want us lost, it wants us desperate. It wants us to kneel." Carrie's chest heaved as she shook her head violently. No, we can't. We won't." The ground rumbled faintly beneath the tires, the vibrations running up through the chassis. The sign loomed closer, though we hadn't moved, as if the earth itself was tilting to draw us in. Carrie buried her face in her hands, sobbing into the dark. And in that moment, I realized the trap wasn't just the road. It was us. Our fear, our exhaustion, our will to survive at any cost. The hunger of Exit 19 was patience. It would wait until we were too weak, too broken, until surrender felt like relief. I gritted my teeth, reaching across to squeeze Carrie's hand. "Listen to me. We're not going to kneel. No matter what it does, we don't bow, we don't feed it." Her tear-streaked face lifted slowly, eyes glistening in the glow of the headlights. And then, from somewhere in the fields around us, came the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy, circling. Jasper barked once, a sharp cry before going silent. His ears pinned flat, tail tucked between his legs. The footsteps multiplied, from one side, then the other. A ring of movement tightening around the RV. Carrie clutched my arm, whispering through trembling lips, "What if we can't fight it? What if it's already inside?" The knocking resumed. Not from below this time, from within the walls. A steady rhythm, in time with my pulse, echoing through the thin metal shell that was supposed to keep us safe. The RV felt suddenly fragile, like paper stretched over a drum. Every hollow thud a reminder that we weren't alone. I stared at the glowing sign ahead of us, the field pressing closer, the road breathing beneath the earth. And I knew the boy had been right. This wasn't about where we drove, it was about whether we'd break. The knocking grew louder, spreading like water seeping through cracks. It started low in the walls, then the cabinets, then the very frame of the RV itself, as if dozens of fists were beating to get out or to get in. Carrie pressed herself back into the seat, tears streaking her face. "It's inside. Oh God, it's already inside." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "No, it's not inside. It's testing us. It wants us to believe it's already won." But even as I said the words, doubt tore at me, because the RV didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like a coffin. The footsteps outside circled closer, crunching through dry grass. They weren't hurried. They weren't hunting. They were patient, measured, like a predator pacing the edge of a snare, waiting for the trapped animal to collapse. Then, a sound I hadn't expected. Click. One of the overhead cabinet latches popped open. The door swung wide, banging against its hinge. Carrie screamed, her hands flying to her mouth. Another latch popped, then another. All down the row. Click, click, click. Doors yawning open one by one as though invisible hands were rifling through every hiding place we had. Jasper whimpered low, his body trembling as he crouched beneath the table. I stood, heart hammering, scanning the cabinets, the vents, the corners. But nothing moved except the doors themselves, swaying lightly as though stirred by some unseen draft. And then came the whisper. Not outside, not in the walls. Right behind my ear. You're tired. I spun so fast I slammed my shoulder against the counter. My flashlight beam cut through empty space. Carrie's voice shook. What did it say? I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want to give the thing more weight than it already had. But lying felt worse. It told me I was tired. Her sob caught in her throat. It knows. I wanted to tell her that wasn't true, that it was bluffing. But my legs betrayed me. They were trembling so badly I had to brace against the counter just to stay upright. The voice came again, this time closer. This time from both sides. You can rest here. Just stop fighting. Just give in. The walls vibrated faintly with the words, as though the entire RV had become its mouth. Carrie covered her ears, shaking her head violently. No, 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 no. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. We were swallowed by dark. For a few heartbeats, I could hear nothing but Carrie's ragged sobs and the rapid thud of my own heart. Then faintly, the glow seeped in through the windshield. Exit 19. The sign stood less than 30 feet from the hood now, bathing the cabin in its sick green light. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, the cabinets rattled, the walls thudded, the whispers grew louder. Just feed us. Just kneel. Just stop. Carrie snapped. Her seatbelt unclicked and she lunged for the door. I can't take it anymore. I caught her wrist mid-swing, yanking her back hard enough that we both stumbled against the dinette. No, that's what it wants. She fought me like a wild animal, her nails raking my arm, her teeth clenched so tight her jaw popped. I'd rather die out there than suffocate in here. Her words tore through me, not because she was wrong, but because part of me agreed. The RV shuddered suddenly, rocking side to side as though a giant hand had shoved it. Dishes toppled from the cabinets, shattering against the linoleum. Jasper yelped, sliding across the floor, claws scrambling for grip. The rocking stopped as quickly as it started. Then, silence. A silence so complete it rang in my ears. Carrie froze against me, trembling. I strained to listen. Nothing outside. Nothing in the walls, and then tap at the window. A single fingertip against the glass. I turned slowly, dread crushing the air from my lungs. At the driver's side window stood a figure. Pale, too tall, its features warped by the glow. Its hand was pressed flat against the glass, the fingers impossibly long, bending like reeds in water. Its face was wrong. Not human, not entirely. Eyes like dark hollows, mouth a gash that stretched far too wide, curving upward in something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so empty. Carrie let out a strangled wail. The figure tilted its head, pressing its face closer to the glass. The skin rippled faintly, as though its body was nothing but a veil stretched over something shifting beneath. The whisper came again, not in my ear this time, from its mouth. Let us in. The glass fogged where it spoke, as though its breath carried heat. My entire body locked. Every instinct screamed to run, to throw open the door and sprint into the night. But another voice, quieter, steadier, echoed in my head. The boy's voice. Don't feed it. I forced air through my throat. No. The figure froze, its head jerking sharply as though it hadn't expected the word. No, I said again, louder this time, my voice shaking but resolute. You don't get to have us. Carrie clutched my arm, sobbing, her nails digging into my skin. The figure's smile widened, splitting the skin at the corners of its mouth. A black fluid seeped down its chin, dripping against the glass but never falling. suspended, defying gravity, clinging to the window like tar. Then, without warning, the figure stepped backward. 1 step, 2, and vanished into the glow. The silence returned, thicker than before, pressing down like weight. Carrie collapsed against me, her whole body racked with sobs. It's never going to stop. It's never going to let us leave. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tightly as I could. My own chest shook with terror, but I forced my voice steady. Then we don't stop either. We don't kneel. We don't feed it. If we're stuck here forever, then we fight forever. But even as I said it, I wondered how long forever really was, because I could already feel the exhaustion creeping in, hollowing me out. And the road, the living, breathing thing that held us here, had no such weakness. And sooner or later, one of us would break. The RV smelled wrong. At first, I thought it was just the stress making me imagine things. But then Carrie gagged and pulled her shirt up over her nose, and I knew it wasn't in my head. It smelled like rot. Not food, not trash, rot. Damp earth mixed with something sour and metallic like meat left too long in the sun. I traced the smell to the kitchen sink. Brown water had begun to bubble up through the drain, thick and slow, carrying with it strands of black hair and something that looked disturbingly like strips of skin. Carrie stumbled backward, her hand clamped over her mouth. "That's not possible. We don't even have water hooked up." I grabbed the roll of duct tape from the counter and slapped it over the drain, pressing hard until it sealed. The bubbling slowed, but the smell only deepened, crawling into the walls, into the fabric of the cushions, into my lungs. Then came the creaking, not the normal groans of a house on wheels. This was different. This was structural. The RV shifted under us, the floor sagging ever so slightly as though something had crawled beneath and pressed upward, testing its strength. Carrie grabbed my arm, eyes wide. "It's eating the RV." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that it was just our minds unraveling. But when I touched the wall by the dinette, my fingers sank into it. Not all the way through, but enough to feel that the wood was soft, spongy, as if rotting from the inside out. The voice came then, no longer a whisper, but resonant, vibrating through the very frame of the RV. "You've seen what we can take. Now give." Carrie clamped her hands over her ears, screaming. Jasper barked wildly, spinning in frantic circles. The lights flickered again, not just on and off, but dimming into a sickly yellow glow. The green from exit 19 pulsed brighter through the windshield, bathing everything in its color like we were being lowered into a swamp. The voice grew louder, reverberating inside my bones. "Give one, stay the other. The road will choose." I froze. The words were plain, simple, an ultimatum. Carrie staggered back, shaking her head violently. "No, no, 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 I'm not choosing. I won't." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she fell to her knees, clutching her chest as if the weight of the air itself had crushed her. I knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "Listen to me. We're not playing its game. Do you understand? That's what it wants. It wants us to start turning on each other." She sobbed, her whole body trembling. But what if it's the only way out? Her words cut through me like a blade, because I'd thought the same thing, just for a second. And even that thought felt like a betrayal. The RV groaned again, louder this time. The ceiling bowed, dust drifting down like ash. The voice pressed harder. "One for the road, or all are mine." I pressed my forehead against hers, trying to block out the sound, trying to anchor her. "Don't listen. Don't you dare listen. We'll find another way." She shook her head against me, whispering through tears. "It's not going to stop." Her words were right. I knew it. The thing wasn't bluffing. It would keep rotting the RV, crushing it piece by piece until we either gave in or suffocated inside. A new sound erupted then. Scratching. From beneath the floor, like nails clawing upward through the wood. Long, deliberate strokes, pulling, prying, digging. Jasper backed into the corner, teeth bared, growling low. The linoleum split, just a hairline crack at first, then wider, splintering open as black tar-like fluid seeped through, sizzling against the floor. Carrie screamed and scrambled back onto the bench seat. I grabbed a frying pan from the counter and slammed it against the crack over and over, but it did nothing. The tar kept seeping, bubbling, filling the air with a stench that burned my throat raw. The voice grew soft again, coaxing, almost tender. End the suffering. Choose. One for the road. I threw the pan aside and pressed my hands to my ears, shaking my head furiously. No, you don't get to decide. You don't get to take anything. The RV fell silent. The tar stopped bubbling. The scratching ceased. The floor held, but the sign outside pulsed brighter, flooding the cabin with its glow until every surface, every shadow, every breath was green. And then I saw it. Words. Carved into the condensation on the windshield from the inside, letters forming slowly, one jagged line at a time as though etched by a finger none of us could see. Choose. Carrie collapsed against me, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Jasper whimpered, pressing his body against my legs, shaking uncontrollably. And me, I sat frozen, staring at that single word, knowing with a hollow certainty that this was only the beginning. Because the road wasn't asking anymore, it was demanding. And it wasn't going to wait forever. Carrie didn't sleep that night. Not that I really did either. Every time I drifted, even for a second, I woke to the sound of her whispering under her breath, almost chanting, her eyes open, locked on the windshield where the words still lingered in condensation. Choose. She sat upright on the bench, knees pulled to her chest, whispering the same words over and over. Not me, not me, not me, not me. It broke something inside me to hear her say it. Jasper paced the narrow aisle of the RV, nails clicking against the floor, whining like he could sense the decision pressing in on us. I wanted to comfort them both, to say something strong enough to banish the road's presence, but every word that came to me sounded like a lie. By morning, or what passed for morning under that green-lit sky, Carrie's voice had grown hoarse. She wouldn't look at me. She only stared at the windshield, rocking gently, repeating the mantra softer now, as if her voice were fading. I tried everything, water, food, even shaking her gently by the shoulders. Nothing brought her back. Finally, I pressed my hand over hers, firm, grounding. Carrie, listen to me. You're stronger than this. You've survived worse. Remember when your car broke down outside Sedona and you walked 6 miles barefoot just to find help? You're the one who taught me how to push through. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't answer. She only pressed her face into her knees and whispered again, not me. That's when I realized what the road was doing. It wasn't just demanding a sacrifice. It was twisting us into making the choice ourselves, turning survival into betrayal, making us complicit. It wanted to poison the bond we had, corrode it until we gave each other up willingly. That was the real trap. The RV shuddered violently then, as if the road itself resented me for figuring it out. Cabinet doors flew open. Cans and plates tumbled to the floor, rolling and clattering. The fridge door slammed wide, and the faint light inside cast shadows that bent wrong, long and sharp, stretching across the walls as if the objects themselves were reaching for us. Jasper bolted under the table, growling with a ferocity I'd never heard from him. The voice returned, whispering this time, curling like smoke through the air vents. Truth is choice. Love is choice. Choose, or love dies here. Carrie finally looked at me. Her face was pale, eyes sunken, but there was a clarity in her gaze that hadn't been there before. You have to do it, she said. The words knocked the air out of me. No, don't even say that. Don't you ever say that. She shook her head, her lips trembling, but her voice steady. If it's me or both of us, it has to be me. That's how these things work. I grabbed her shoulders, shaking her hard enough that her hair fell into her face. No, that's not how anything works. Don't you see? That's exactly what it wants. That's its trick. She didn't resist. She just stared at me with a quiet resignation that terrified me more than any supernatural threat ever could. I pressed my forehead to hers, desperate. Carrie, don't you dare leave me like that. Don't you dare give up. If it takes you, it takes me too. Tears finally cut through her composure, but her words were sharp as broken glass. And what about Jasper? What about your family waiting back home? You want to let all of us die here just because you're too stubborn to make one choice." Her words cut deep, because she knew me too well. She knew how much I hated compromise, how I clung to principles even when it meant burning myself. But this wasn't about pride. This was about refusing to hand ourselves over to something that thrived on despair. I stood, pacing the narrow space, running both hands through my hair until it hurt. There has to be another way. A trick. Something it doesn't want us to see. The RV groaned again, as though mocking me. The windshield fogged with fresh condensation. New words formed, deliberate, each letter scraping my nerves raw as they emerged. Time is short. I turned back to Carrie, my chest heaving. She had closed her eyes now, tears still leaking through, but her body was slumped, exhausted, resigned. I couldn't let it end like this. I grabbed Jasper's collar and pulled him close, stroking his fur to calm him, though my hands shook uncontrollably. "Listen, buddy," I whispered. "You're not going anywhere. Do you hear me? You're staying with us. We're all staying." Jasper whined, resting his head against my knee as though he understood. Carrie whispered again without opening her eyes. "I don't want to be chosen." The words hit like a hammer, because that was the cruelest part of all. None of us did. And yet here we were, standing at the edge of a choice we never wanted, one we couldn't make without destroying ourselves. The green light from exit 19 pulsed brighter, the RV filling with its glow until it drowned out every other color. And then, for the first time, it spoke directly to me. "You hold the wheel, you lead the road, choose and the road continues, refuse and the road ends here." The steering wheel rattled violently, turning side to side as though unseen hands gripped it, demanding control. I staggered forward, slamming my hands down on it to hold it still. "No, this is my RV, my road. You don't get to decide." The voice hissed, guttural now, vibrating through the dashboard. "Your road ended miles ago." The engine roared to life on its own, the whole RV shaking as if it were about to launch forward whether we wanted it to or not. The exit sign outside flared so bright it seared my eyes, the arrow pointing down that endless ramp. Carrie screamed, Jasper barked, and I felt the wheel buck against my grip like a living thing. And I realized in that moment that the choice wasn't just about life or death anymore. It was about who would be behind this wheel when the RV left the ramp. The steering wheel writhed in my grip. It wasn't just shaking. It twisted, flexed like something alive, like bones shifting beneath skin. My arms burned as I fought to hold it steady. Carrie screamed again, pressing herself against the wall, shielding Jasper with her body as the RV lurched forward on its own. The headlights blasted across the empty highway, then locked on that impossible green glow spilling from exit 19. The road was dragging us, pulling us like a tide. "Don't let it," Carrie shrieked, her voice sharp with panic, but I couldn't tell if she was talking to me or pleading with the thing that owned the road. My muscles screamed with the effort. The wheel spun violently, skin tearing at my palms. It wanted to take the turn. It wanted to drive us off the main highway and down into that pulsing green abyss. I gritted my teeth, planting my feet against the floor and pulling back with every ounce of strength I had left. "No, you don't get to decide." The voice inside the RV deepened, shaking the glass in the cabinets. "Choose or lose." The dash lights flickered, gauges spinning wildly. The radio blared static, then voices layered on top of one another. Carrie's voice, my own, even Jasper's barks. Distorted and looping. "Not me, not me, not me. Don't let go, don't let go. Choose, choose, choose." It was chaos, a storm made of our own fear. The RV veered hard left, tires screaming against the pavement. I slammed my shoulder into the wheel to counter it, the seatbelt cutting deep into my chest. We swerved violently back, the trailer hitched behind us, groaning under the strain. "Carrie, help me," I roared. But she didn't move. She just sat there, hands over her ears, rocking back and forth as if her mind had already broken. That was when I understood. This thing wasn't just after one of us. It was dismantling us piece by piece. If it could break her will, if it could break mine, it wouldn't need to choose. We would deliver ourselves. I couldn't let that happen. My mind reached for anything, any memory that could anchor me against the pull of that ramp. And one came unbidden, our first trip in this RV. The two of us laughing when the awning collapsed in the rain, sitting shoulder to shoulder under blankets, Jasper curled between us. That memory carried a weight, a gravity stronger than the road's lies. I latched onto it, forcing my body to remember who I was before this highway tried to rewrite me. With a guttural roar, I yanked the wheel hard right, fighting the unnatural force that wanted to drag us left. The tires screamed. The RV fishtailed. The glow of exit 19 loomed closer, just yards away now. "Choose," the voice thundered. The windshield fogged again, letters scrawling so violently they etched into the glass. "Last chance." The ramp rushed toward us, a mouth opening wide, lined in green fire. I didn't think. I acted. Slamming both feet on the brake, I wrenched the wheel away from the exit. The RV skidded, rubber burning, smoke filling the cabin as the world tilted sideways. Carrie's scream tore through me as cabinets ripped from their hinges and slammed to the floor. Jasper yelped. We slid across 2 lanes, metal shrieking, and for a second I thought we'd tip. The whole RV balanced on 2 wheels before slamming back down. The ramp shot past in a blur of green light, and then silence. The engine cut out instantly, as if someone had pulled the key. The headlights dimmed. The dashboard died. The only sound was the faint ping of cooling metal. I sat frozen, hands fused to the wheel, chest heaving, unable to believe we hadn't been swallowed whole. Slowly, painfully, I pried my fingers off the wheel. My palms were raw, bloodied, where the leather had bitten into them. Carrie still sat against the wall, shaking violently. Jasper pressed against her. She looked at me with wide, hollow eyes as though she didn't recognize me anymore. The highway stretched ahead into pure blackness again. No green light, no signs, just nothing. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, Carrie whispered, her voice trembling, You didn't choose." Her words weren't accusation. They were wonder, disbelief. I swallowed hard, staring out the windshield. Maybe that was the choice. But the truth was, I didn't know if we'd won anything. I didn't know if the road was finished with us or if we'd just postponed the inevitable. Carrie pushed herself up unsteadily, clutching the table for balance. Her voice cracked as she spoke. If it can't force us, then maybe that's the answer. We don't play its game. I nodded, though my gut churned, because part of me knew this road wasn't done yet. It wasn't in its nature to let go. Still, I started the engine. The key turned without resistance, like nothing had ever been wrong. The headlights blinked on. The RV hummed like it always had. The only difference was us. We rolled forward, slower this time, the tires humming against the endless black. Carrie sat beside me, silent, her hand clutching Jasper's fur so tight he whimpered. She didn't let go, and I didn't either. My hands stayed locked on the wheel, even when the road stretched flat and harmless ahead, even when no more signs appeared. I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, just beyond the reach of the headlights, exit 19 was still waiting for the moment one of us broke. The road ran quiet for a long while, too quiet. No more glowing ramps, no more signs, just endless pavement vanishing into the night. The silence pressed down on us thicker than before, as if the world itself had stopped to see what we'd do next. I tried to believe we were free, but my hands never left the wheel. Carrie leaned back against the seat, pale, hollow-eyed. She hadn't stopped trembling since the last fight with the exit ramp. She held Jasper tight against her chest, his little body shivering as if he could feel something neither of us could see. I glanced at her, then at him. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe he was the key. Maybe the road hadn't gotten him because he was too small, too innocent. But then Jasper raised his head, and his eyes reflected the dash lights in a way I'd never seen before, too bright, like coins catching fire. He growled low in his throat, staring out the windshield at the black highway. My gut sank. "Carrie," I whispered, "hold him close. Don't let him look." She blinked at me, dazed. "What do you mean? Just keep his eyes off the road." She nodded slowly, pulling him tighter. But Jasper squirmed, restless, whining in short bursts. his nails scraping against her arm as though he wanted down. That was when the radio clicked on again. Static at first, then a faint scratching noise, not words this time, something else. It sounded like claws dragging over metal, like dog nails on the inside of a door. Jasper froze, his ears perked, his whole body went rigid. The sound repeated, tap, scrape, taps. It was coming through every speaker, surrounding us. No, shaking my head. Not him. Not him. Not him, you hear me? The RV answered. The windshield fogged over, letters scrawling across the glass so violently that the streaks cut like cracks into the surface. Choose the pet. Carrie let out a choked sob, clutching Jasper until he whimpered. No, he doesn't count, she screamed at the glass. He doesn't count. But the road didn't care. The claws in the speakers grew louder, sharper, faster, as if something was trapped inside the RV walls, desperate to get out or get in. Jasper barked suddenly, loud and frantic, throwing his body toward the dashboard. Carrie struggled to hold him back, her face twisted in panic. Then the headlights cut out. We were plunged into blackness. The engine still ran, but the light was gone. All that remained was the faint glow of the letters on the windshield, casting the cabin in an eerie, pale haze. Choose the pet. I gripped the wheel tighter, refusing. My jaw ached from how hard I clenched it. You're not taking him, I said aloud, though I wasn't sure if I was speaking to the road or myself. The speakers shrieked in unison, a sound like tearing metal. And then, just as suddenly, the RV jolted. Hard. The whole vehicle bucked like something massive had collided with us. Carrie screamed, Jasper yelped, and I fought to keep us straight. My knuckles split open against the wheel. Another hit came from the other side. Then another. The RV shook violently as though surrounded by invisible hands trying to knock it off the road. And through the chaos came Jasper's whimper, a small, pitiful sound that cut through me sharper than any blow. I risked a glance. His eyes glowed brighter now, pupils dilated as if the road had reached into him. No, I whispered, throat dry. Not him. Take me. Take me. The windshield responded instantly, the letters shifting into something new. Not yours to give. The blows against the RV grew harder. Cabinet doors slammed open and shut by themselves. The refrigerator rocked loose from its bolts and toppled forward, crashing against the floor. Glass shattered somewhere behind us. Carrie shouted over the din, voice breaking, "It won't stop until we give it something." Her words cut through me, because deep down I knew she was right. This thing wasn't going to leave without its price. I shook my head violently, sweat flying. No, we don't give it anything. Then it'll take him, she cried, sobbing into Jasper's fur. Do you want that on you? Do you? The RV shuddered so hard I thought the axles would snap. I could feel us sliding toward the shoulder, toward a drop-off I couldn't see. My mind tore in two. Every instinct screamed at me to protect Jasper, to shield him at all costs. But the road was twisting those instincts, turning them into weapons against me. And still, the memory of the words etched across the windshield burned in my mind. Not yours to give. It wanted me to hand Jasper over. But maybe that was another lie. Maybe if I resisted, if I held him tighter, it couldn't take him. Or maybe it would tear the RV apart trying. Carrie, I shouted, the roar of the shaking nearly drowning me out. Don't let go of him, no matter what happens. Her tear-streaked face snapped toward me, eyes wide, desperate. What if it rips him away? What then? I couldn't answer, because I didn't know. The RV lurched again, harder this time, and I realized something horrifying. Whatever was hitting us wasn't trying to knock us over. It was trying to shake Jasper loose. The radio shrieked louder, claws scraping, voices screaming in unison. Let him run! Let him run! Let him run! Jasper barked wildly, twisting against Carrie's grip. His small body writhed, muscles straining. His eyes burned with that unnatural glow, as though he wanted to leap straight into the dark road outside. No, I roared, stomping the brake with everything I had. The RV screeched, tires locking, smoke filling the cabin as the vehicle fishtailed across the asphalt. Carrie screamed, Jasper howled, the whole world tilting as gravity fought us. And then, silence again. The RV slid to a stop at a crooked angle across the road. No impacts, no claws, no glowing words, Nothing but the sound of our ragged breathing. The headlights blinked back on, steady this time. Jasper trembled in Carrie's arms, panting hard, but the glow in his eyes faded back to normal. The windshield was empty. Clear. We sat frozen, afraid to move, afraid to breathe too loudly in case it all started again. Finally, Carrie whispered broken, "Why won't it let us go?" I swallowed hard, staring at the endless road ahead. My voice came out like gravel, because it's not done feeding yet. And though I hated myself for even thinking it, I realized something. The road wasn't just hungry for one of us. It wanted to see how far we'd break before we gave in. The silence after the attack was worse than the chaos. I sat gripping the wheel so tight my fingers felt welded to it. Carrie still held Jasper, rocking him like he was the only thing tethering her to reality. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, I forced words past the lump in my throat. We can't just keep letting it hit us until something breaks. We need to take control. Carrie looked at me, eyes swollen and red. How? It's everywhere. It's the road, the RV, the air. It's rules, I cut in. It plays by rules, signs, commands, choices. It keeps asking, begging, testing. Maybe that means it can be beaten. She shook her head. You didn't see Jasper's eyes. It was in him. It almost had him. That's exactly why we fight, I said, heat rising in my voice. If it wants him so bad, then we use that against it. Carrie clutched Jasper tighter, recoiling. Use him? No. I'm not saying we give him up, I said quickly. I'm saying we lure it in, trap it, make it show itself. If it wants him, fine, it'll come for him. But we'll be ready. She stared at me like I was mad. Maybe I was. But something in her expression softened, just a little. Because she knew as well as I did, we couldn't keep running blind. What do you want me to do? She whispered. Keep him close, but when it makes its move, you don't fight it. You let it think it's winning. I'll take care of the rest. Her lip trembled. And if it takes him before you can stop it? I looked straight ahead at the black road, endless and waiting. My voice came out like stone. Then it takes me too. We drove on. The silence didn't last. The first sign flickered back into view after maybe an hour, not glowing this time, not burned into the windshield, just a normal green highway sign, standing crooked at the edge of the shoulder. Only the lettering was wrong. Exit 0, pets this way. Carrie whimpered softly, hugging Jasper until he squeaked. I pressed the accelerator harder. Not this time, but the road wasn't letting us pass so easily. The air thickened, the asphalt rippled like a mirage. And then, as the headlights swept forward, something enormous moved at the edge of the beam. It was the ramp, except it wasn't a ramp. It was alive. Concrete bending like muscle, steel guardrails flexing like ribs. The road curled itself upward, rising from the ground, a colossal loop twisting toward us like a serpent made of pavement. My stomach dropped. Oh, God, Carrie screamed, pointing. Jasper barked wildly. The ramp lunged across the road, slamming down in front of us with an impact that made the RV bounce on its shocks. Asphalt cracked and split like skin tearing open. Dust billowed. It wasn't a choice anymore. It was a blockade. The ramp's glowing signs swung down from above, massive, letters burning. Choose the pet. I floored the gas. The RV roared forward, engines screaming. If it wanted Jasper, if it wanted us, then we'd meet it head on. Carrie shouted my name in terror, but I didn't slow down. The wheels shook in my hands, tires screaming against the fractured road. The ramp reared higher, shadow engulfing us. And then we hit. The RV slammed into the base of the structure with a sound like thunder. Metal screamed, glass shattered. The world became fire and noise. For a moment, I thought we'd been crushed flat. But when I opened my eyes again, we weren't destroyed. We were inside it. The walls around us weren't metal anymore. They were pulsing, veined, alive. The RV skidded across a surface that throbbed beneath the tires like flesh. Red light seeped through cracks, glowing from deep within. Carrie shrieked, clutching Jasper as the whole cabin warped around us. Drawers flew open, wood splintered, the floor buckling under pressure. We weren't on a highway anymore. We were in its throat. The radio blared, deafening, voices chanting in a dozen tones at once. Choose! 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 Jasper howled, twisting violently in Carrie's arms. His eyes blazed again, brighter than ever, like molten coins. She couldn't hold him anymore. He leapt free, landing on the dashboard. "Jasper!" she screamed, scrambling after him. I tried to grab him too, but it was too late. He was staring straight out the cracked windshield at the red, throbbing tunnel ahead. His little body went rigid, ears pinned back, and then I understood. It wasn't just hungry. It wasn't just feeding. It wanted through him. It wanted his eyes, his mouth, his body. A vessel. The road wasn't trying to eat us. It was trying to wear us. "No," I whispered, realization cutting me in half. Not him. Not anyone. I wrenched the wheel hard to the left, forcing the RV against the living wall of the tunnel. Sparks exploded as metal scraped flesh. The vehicle shuddered, frame tearing, but I didn't stop. The road screamed, actually screamed, a sound so deep and raw it rattled every bone in my body. Carrie crawled forward, grabbing Jasper just as the windshield shattered inward. Shards of glass flew, cutting my arms, my face, but she held him tight against her chest, shielding him. I pushed the accelerator to the floor. The tunnel narrowed, walls closing, pressing, desperate to hold us. But the RV forced through, tearing chunks of living asphalt free as it surged forward. Somewhere ahead, light. A pinprick at first, then brighter, wider, burning white. "Hold on," I roared. The RV burst from the tunnel with a final deafening crack, shape exploding through a wall of crumbling stone and asphalt. For one terrifying second, we were airborne, weightless in the night. And then we slammed down hard on solid pavement. Real pavement. I braked until the tires screamed. The RV fishtailed, smoke trailing behind us, then finally ground to a stop in the middle of an ordinary two-lane highway. No glowing signs, no voices, just the distant chirp of crickets in the fields. We sat in stunned silence, smoke curling from the dashboard. Carrie sobbed into Jasper's fur, kissing his head over and over. He wagged his tail weakly, eyes back to normal. I stared out the cracked windshield at the empty highway stretching into darkness. My chest heaved, lungs burning. We'd done it. We'd fought back. We'd escaped. But as the silence settled, a single thought burrowed into my mind and refused to leave. What if we hadn't escaped at all? What if this was just another layer of the road, one designed to look normal, to trick us into believing we were safe? The crickets chirped louder. Too loud. Perfectly rhythmic, like a metronome. Carrie lifted her head, eyes wide with new fear. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded slowly, my stomach dropping into a pit, because deep in that rhythm, beneath the chirps, I swore I could hear words. 3 of them. Over and over, in perfect unison. "Choose the pet." The crickets never stopped. We sat frozen in the ruined RV, staring out at the empty highway. Carrie clutched Jasper so tight I thought she might crush him, rocking slowly, whispering under her breath. I couldn't look away from the darkness beyond the headlights, because I knew it wasn't over. It had let us think we'd escaped. It had let us breathe, let us feel the illusion of safety. But that chant, the crickets echoing with impossible voices, proved the truth. We were still inside it. I tried the ignition, more out of desperation than hope. The RV coughed, metal grinding, then fell silent. A column of smoke rose from the hood. Dead. We weren't going anywhere. Carrie's whispering grew louder, her voice breaking. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep fighting it. We should have taken the exit. We should have listened." Her words hit me like a slap. "You think it would have been better?" I snapped, though my own voice cracked with exhaustion. "You think giving him up would have ended this?" She lifted her head, hair falling wild across her face, eyes glassy. "Maybe it just wants what it asked for. Maybe all this is because we keep refusing. Maybe if we just—" "Stop," I growled louder than I meant to. My chest tightened, panic surging. "Don't even say it. Don't even think it." But she already had, and the road knew it. The crickets cut off all at once. Silence fell so heavy it pressed on my ears. Then the air shifted. Headlights flickered down the highway, 2 pinpoints of light, impossibly bright, growing closer. I felt the hair rise on my arms. No engine sound, no tires, just the light gliding silently across the blacktop toward us. Carrie whimpered, clutching Jasper tighter. His little body trembled, ears pinned flat. I stood, knees weak, and stepped toward the windshield. My reflection stared back at me in the cracked glass, eyes sunken, face bloodied but alive. Then slowly another reflection appeared beside mine. Not Carrie, not Jasper, not anyone I knew. A man, tall, shoulders bent, face obscured by shadow, but his mouth was moving. I leaned closer, heart hammering, and though I couldn't hear his voice, I knew the words. Choose the pet. The headlights outside blazed brighter, flooding the RV with blinding white. Carrie screamed, shielding Jasper. I stumbled back, eyes burning. When the light dimmed, we weren't in the RV anymore. We were standing on the highway itself. Empty, endless, the RV gone, the fields gone. Just black asphalt stretching in both directions under a starless sky. Carrie knelt on the road, clutching Jasper to her chest, rocking him like a newborn, and standing in front of us, the man. Closer now. His face was wrong. Skin stretched too tight, features blurred, like a photograph smeared with water. His body flickered at the edges, part human, part something else. But his mouth moved clearly this time, and his voice was inside my head. Choose. The pet. The words throbbed like a heartbeat, reverberating through my skull. I grabbed Carrie's arm, pulling her to her feet. Don't listen. It's a trick. She shook me off violently. Her eyes were wild, desperate. What if it's not? What if this is the only way out? There is no way out if we give him up, I said, forcing the words past my trembling lips. Don't you see? It's not about Jasper. It's about us, about what we'll do when we're desperate. But she was already crying, shaking her head. Jasper whined in her arms. The man's hollow face leaned closer. His blurred mouth spread wide, wider, too wide. Rows of teeth unfolding like broken glass. Choose. The voice hit so hard my vision swam. Carrie staggered, clutching her ears, sobbing. I can't keep fighting it. I'll do anything. Just make it stop. And then she looked down at Jasper. My blood ran cold. Carrie, I whispered, my throat raw. Don't. Her arms loosened. Jasper squirmed, confused, afraid. His little tail twitched, his head tilting up at her like he couldn't understand why her grip was fading. Please, I begged, tears burning my eyes. Don't give him up. Not him. Not him. Not anyone. Don't let it win. For a moment she froze. Her whole body shook, torn in two. Then her gaze met mine, and I saw it. Resolve. Not strength. Not faith. Just the hollow resolve of someone too tired to keep fighting. She held Jasper out, toward the man. No. I lunged forward, ripping him from her arms. My chest felt like it was tearing open, my lungs screaming for air. The man's blurred face loomed inches from mine. His voice thundered through me, a soundless roar that split my mind. Choose. I clutched Jasper tight against me. His heartbeat hammered against my chest, fast and fragile. He licked my chin, trembling, innocent. I looked into the man's hollow face, teeth glinting in that endless grin. I realized the truth. It didn't matter what I chose. The choice itself was the trap. The road didn't want Jasper. It didn't want Carrie. It didn't even want me. It wanted the moment we broke. The moment we proved we were willing to hand over what we loved. That was the feast. That was the fuel. The choice was the consumption. I shook my head slowly, clutching Jasper tighter. No, I whispered. My voice cracked, but I forced it out louder. I won't choose. Not him. Not ever. The man's form flickered violently, glitching, edges tearing like paper in fire. His grin widened into a rictus of rage. The ground shook. The asphalt beneath our feet cracked, splitting open to reveal endless red light below, pulsing like a wound. Carrie screamed, stumbling backward. The man lunged. I held Jasper high, shielding him with my body. You can take me, I shouted, but you'll never have him. The red light swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in the driver's seat. The RV was whole, engine humming, dashboard lights glowing softly. Beside me, Carrie slept in the passenger seat, head against the window, face peaceful, and Jasper was curled in her lap, breathing gently, tail flicking in dreams. The road stretched ahead in the headlights. Silent. Empty. Normal. For a long time I didn't move. Maybe we'd escaped. Maybe it was over. But as I reached for the wheel, the radio crackled softly, and in the faintest whisper, almost too quiet to hear, a voice breathed, "Choose the pet." I was one of the few left on payroll, called in irregularly to watch over abandoned stock, check the ties, and keep vagrants from sleeping in the empty cars. I didn't complain. Nights suited me. The quiet of the place was a kind of punishment, but also a kind of peace, until I started seeing it. They told me the line was closed, had been for decades. They told me no trains ran here anymore, not since the flood in '73 washed out the trestle bridge. But sometimes, when the fog thickened over the valley and the frost whispered across the steel, I'd hear something sliding in the dark, a hum low in the rails, a vibration under my boots, and then I'd see it. A silver-gray passenger train gliding through the yard without smoke, without a sound, slowing as if to stop but never stopping. The windows were lit from within, and every seat was filled. The first time, I thought fatigue had tricked me. Nights can warp your senses in the woods or in the field, but the rail yard had its own distortion. Frost bit the air with a metallic tang, the poles creaked under the weight of ice, and the deer sometimes screamed in the trees, a sound that didn't belong to any natural throat. My flashlight beam cut tunnels through the fog. I remember lifting it toward the train, only to have the light fall short, like the beam was absorbed before touching steel. I could still see the passengers, though, clear as any man or woman waiting for a stop. Gray coats, stiff collars, and pale faces turned to the window as if they knew me, as if they'd been waiting. I didn't report it. You don't mention things like that on the job. Not when you're alone. Not when you've been written up before for drinking on shift, or when your supervisor already thinks you're spooked by shadows. You keep it to yourself. But it didn't keep to me. Nights after, the air in the yard shifted before it came. A sudden stillness. Even the crickets cut out. The wind froze in the trees. Once I held my breath so long I nearly passed out, because I couldn't shake the thought that if I exhaled, they'd hear me. The train slid through, silent as smoke, gray on gray, every window alive with light. No faces moved, no lips parted. They just stared, as if measuring me. I began marking the nights, scribbles on scrap paper, tallies on my locker door. It wasn't every night. Sometimes a week passed, sometimes twice in one shift, always near midnight, always when I was alone. Once, I asked another worker, an old-timer who remembered the floods, if he'd ever heard of a train that didn't belong. He gave me a look that stuck with me longer than any ghost story could. He didn't answer. He just walked away. The strangeness deepened in the small details. Tools left out would vanish. My thermos went missing from the shack and reappeared days later, dented, with frost inside, even though it hadn't been cold. The yard lights flickered when the rail hum began, buzzing so hard the filaments sounded like hornets. One night when I pressed my ear to the track, I swore I heard whispers carried through the steel, layered voices, too many to count, speaking words I couldn't hold on to. I started camping in my old Volkswagen van on the far side of the yard. I told myself it was easier than driving home at 4 a.m, but the truth was, I wanted shelter close enough to dive into when the gray train appeared. That van became my bunker. But even there, the line found me. Once at midnight sharp, I woke to the van shuddering as though something had passed under it, though the ground was still. My breath fogged the windows from inside, but frost was crawling the glass from out. I swore I heard a horn, so faint, so low, it might have been buried under the earth. It was late November when it came closest. I was making rounds with my flashlight when the yard went still. The fog didn't just roll in, it dropped, heavy, pressing against me like cloth over the mouth. My lungs refused air, and then the headlamp cut through, not yellow, not white, but gray light, if such a color exists, pouring down the line. The train slid in, slowing, nearly stopping. The faces at the windows weren't pale this time. They were vivid, as if alive, as if close enough to touch. One man lifted his hand slowly, deliberately, and pressed his palm to the glass. And God help me, I raised my own hand in answer. The glass should have been 20 feet away, but the chill hit me instantly, a burning frost on my skin. My flashlight cracked in my grip, and in that moment, I wasn't sure if I was outside looking in or inside looking out. The train surged, vanishing back into the fog as though it had never been. My hand was raw with frostbite. I kept my glove on after that, even when I slept, afraid of what it meant. I told myself I'd quit. I'd leave the yard, take day work somewhere else. But weeks passed, and I didn't. I returned night after night like a tether had been fixed to me. I felt watched even on my days off, when I walked the streets of Rutland, when I sat in the diner. Once, in a window's reflection, I thought I saw the gray light pour past, though no train ran down Main Street. The fear wasn't just of seeing it again. It was of what would happen if it finally stopped, if the doors opened. If the passengers who never blinked finally rose from their seats. That's why I'm telling you this, because I know one night soon the train won't glide past, it will break, it will wait, and I'm afraid, more than afraid, that I'll step aboard. I started carrying the old handheld, even on nights when I wasn't scheduled to move anything. It was a relic. Scarred plastic, antenna wrapped with electrical tape, the speaker grill scabbed with rust. The dispatcher frequency was dead after midnight, but sometimes I'd turn the volume all the way up and lay it on the desk in the shack beside my thermos. The hiss was a companion. White noise kept the rest of the quiet from getting inside your head. But the same week I swore that train almost stopped, the hiss changed. It rippled like the radio was picking up water. Then it filled with the faintest speech, so thin I had to hold the unit to my ear and press the speaker to my skin. Orders. Old ones. Track warrants in a cadence I'd only heard in training videos. Clear at Proctor, a voice said, the syllables sticking like ice. Procta. Restricted speed. Approach 11:59. The clock on the wall clicked, and I realized the second hand hesitated when the voice spoke, jumping past the hash as if time refused to sit under the words. I wrote it down. I wrote everything down. Dates, temperatures, humidity, the barometer reading, which owl called and from what stand of trees, the exact minute the yard lights breathed, that quick dim as if something huge had drawn current, though the meters later read a perfect plateau. When my notes made no dent in my fear, I did something stupid and human. I set out to catch the thing. Not with courage, just with habit. You misplace a wrench, you put fluorescent tape on the handle, you hear a train that isn't there, you leave pennies on the rail. They shone ridiculous in the flashlight. 2 little suns on dark steel, one at the yard throat and one at the switch by the old scale. I felt childish even as I did it, but I needed the world to answer in some tangible way. I stood for a long time listening. Crickets. A car on Route 7, muffled by fog, the creak of a snow-bent spruce. No hum, no light. Finally, I climbed into the van and turned the heater to its lowest cough. Frost began to lace the glass. Something about the way it grew, feathered from a center point, then branched, reminded me of x-rays of lungs. I woke to silence so clean it might not have been real. The clock on the dash read 12:03. My mouth tasted like a copper pipe. Every hair on my arms stood. It wasn't fear in the regular sense. It was the body's old warning, a pressure, then the sudden intuition that you were already being observed. I didn't turn the key. I didn't even adjust in my sleeping bag. I just listened. And in that muffled midnight, through the fogged glass and the fabric stink of my own breath, something passed. I didn't see it. But the weight of air shifted as if a large volume had slid through, unknowable and indifferent, and the van springs sighed as if relieved when it was gone. At dawn, when a blue light spread thin over the yard, I walked to the rail throat. The pennies were there. The first was flattened to a wafer so wide the ridges had fled past the copper skin into a halo of metal pressed into the rust. The second was different. It wasn't flattened at all. It was missing. Where it should have sat, the railhead bore a slight smear, not copper, not rust. When I touched it, it came away as powder on my glove, a fine gray dust that smelled faintly sweet, the way old coolant smells when it blooms from a cracked radiator. For the rest of the day, my hand felt cold in a way that heat couldn't persuade. I told myself I'd take that glove to the lab at the cement plant. They sometimes let us use their spectrometer for fun, but I sealed it in a Ziploc and stowed it under the seat instead. The idea of learning what that dust was filled me with a dread I couldn't reason out. Knowing would force me to choose between reporting and keeping my mouth shut, and my record wouldn't survive the report. Neither would my sanity survive the silence. The old-timer Jerry was on day shift the next afternoon, tinkering with a switch lock that had frozen open. He watched me longer than was polite, then jerked his head toward the coffee in the shack. We drank from stained mugs that tasted like the drawer had been left open for 10 years. "You keep putting strange things on the rail," he said, and his tone wasn't accusing. It was tired. "You'll make it angry." I laughed because it was easier than asking what he meant. The chuckle sounded wrong in the lonely room. "What do you think you've seen?" I asked, trying to keep my voice flat. He didn't look at me. "Not what," he said. "When?" He set his mug down with the most careful movement I'd ever seen from a man who once demolished a refrigerator with a sledgehammer for fun. "We lost the trestle in '73, he said. "Everybody knows that. But we lost the schedule before we lost the wood. Used to be a midnight passenger through here on odd days. Extra. No one could tell why. Only that it ran like a whisper. Then it stopped running. The odd days got too quiet." He left before I could ask if he'd seen it himself. The door thumped. Cold scraped over the floor. On my next night off, I went to the library. There's a way small-town libraries hold old news. Microfiche rattling in a box like bones, newspapers folded into acid, brittle hush. The librarian was kind, but she watched me like she'd learned something she didn't want to know the last time she'd pulled this drawer. I sat at the reader until my back hurt and my eyes watered. Flood coverage, bridge photos, politicians and waiters. Then a small paragraph in the corner of a page, eclipsed by a grocery ad. Delayed passenger special canceled until further notice. It mentioned no reason. It mentioned no route. It only printed times. 11:59 departure, 12:09 passage, 12:19 arrival. All from towns I knew as well as my own name, and yet not in any order that matched how the line actually ran. The hair at the nape of my neck pulled tight. Schedules are simple. They match geography. This was a schedule for a map that didn't exist. I started keeping the van not just at the yard, but along the old right-of-way in other places. Vermont is webbed with dead rails, tree lines that run arrow straight then vanish, embankments that hold the last warmth of the afternoon sun, culverts mouth deep with ice. I parked in a gravel turnout where a trestle once crossed a black creek. The timbers slept in the water like ribs. The trees leaned over, listening. At midnight, the fog pooled as if obeying a command, a pale volume growing where there should have been wind. The radio in my hand whispered, "Approach." The word was quiet, the sort of quiet that convinced you to open your mouth and let it inside. Then the radio clicked, and another voice higher, a woman's, familiar in a way that took me a second to place, said, "Number 75, clear to Rutland." It was the voice of our current dispatcher, Danielle. But she wasn't on nights anymore. She'd had her baby in September. She was home. I killed the radio so hard the battery cover came off. After that, it woke something ugly in me. Paranoia, maybe. Or memory. I stopped trusting what I heard, even when it was human. When the supervisor left me a note to inspect the freezer cars, I read it 3 times, held it to my face, and smelled the ink like a dog. When the phone rang, I let it ring until it cut off. Once at 2 a.m., someone tapped the van's rear door with a coin. Quick, bright tinks. The exact sound a conductor makes with a punch against a metal frame. I lay flat and counted to 100 and didn't breathe. I did try to catch it on video. I set the dash cam to loop and wired a second camera to a fence post aimed down the track. Midnight came. The yard held its breath. The air thinned. The cameras kept running. In the morning, I played the files back with the hollow hope you keep for things you don't want to be true. In both feeds, for exactly 12 minutes, the audio went to a straight line of silence. The video didn't black out. It was worse. The images remained. But they froze, then ticked forward one frame every 10 seconds as if the yard itself had been pressed through a narrow slot. My own figure moved in that broken rhythm, lift the head, blink, lower the hand, nothing between the beats. When the timecode read 12 to 12, a shape ghosted across one frame and left a smear on the glass. Not a train. No, never something so obliging. Just a density, a darker gray, a geometry with rules I didn't understand. When I ate lunch that day, grit crunched in my teeth and I realized it wasn't sand. It was the same gray dust that had come off on my glove. In December, the first snow fell, but it was a liar's snow, an inch that melted by noon, leaving the smell of wet iron everywhere. On the night it returned, 3 inches this time, clean, sticky, clinging to tie plates, I made another mistake. I followed the hum. It started not as sound, but as a vibration in my cartilage, a new ache in a place the body doesn't have a name for. The yard tilted. The fog poured in from the creek and laid itself over the rails. I stepped across the switch, past the scale, down into the cut where the embankments rose tight. I kept the flashlight low. The beam showed well-packed snow over ties without a single footprint. Then one appeared in front of me. Not a human print. Not an animal. 2 clean rectangles pressed into the crust, spaced like steps. A step ladder of absence every 6 feet running along the center line of the rail bed where no ties lay. My breath didn't steam. The warmth in my chest had left me 5 minutes before the sound I thought I was chasing ever presented itself as sound. The headlight never came into view. Instead, the gray grew from the sides, as if the air itself had decided on a direction. Something eased by, shouldering the fog aside. I couldn't help it. I turned to follow it. Like a man trailing a river he thinks will lead him to a town. The absence of noise honed to a blade. The line of ladder prints moved ahead of me. And then, close as a whispered secret, I heard my name. My jaw locked. It didn't come from the radio. It came from the rail. The steel under the frost spoke, the syllables carried through metal. Not shouted, not even breathy. A clerk's tone. An inventory voice as if checking items off a list. My first and last, properly enunciated, spoken with a patience that had no human in it. I don't remember kneeling, but I was suddenly down on one knee, ear to the cold web of the rail like an engineer in a cartoon. The steel didn't hum like a string. It pulsed, a periodic tide, and in between the pulses there was a texture, the way a recording of rain, when slowed, becomes hundreds of distinct clicks. Those clicks ordered themselves. A rhythm, a code. Years ago, a man had taught me Morse in the break room to pass time. I didn't remember much, but I remembered one letter. Short, long, short. I lifted my ear, and the cold bit all the way through the cartilage like a stitch. I ran. I ran the way you run when the forest suddenly reveals that it had a different map in mind for you all along. Branches scraped my jacket. Snow kicked up behind me and hung in the beam. I didn't turn off my light. I didn't look back. I aimed for the shack, for electric light, for the stink of old coffee and protective boredom. I got the door open with shaking hands and slammed it on whatever air lived out there. The clock read 12. The second hand didn't move. The second hand didn't move. The whole clock sat like a drawn breath. I blinked hard, tears and cold muddying the labels on the radio knobs, and when I finally made myself look again, the second hand jerked, clicked over 2 marks at once, and sound returned to the room. The heater, the buzz in the fixture, distant plow scrapings on a county road. My breath fogged. It hadn't for a while. I expected relief to come first. Instead, guilt. Pure and simple. I don't need to unpack where that came from. There's more than one shelf in me built to hold it. Years ago, I was supposed to check a handbrake on a parked string and didn't, and a car rolled 6 feet, just enough to scare a trespasser half to death and give me a formal write-up. Once, when my brother called from a bar for a ride, I muted the phone and turned it face down and let him take a cab with a stranger. Everybody lived, but the look he gave me later taught me more about the ways you can abandon someone without moving. Standing in that shack, feeling the heat come back into my lips like someone was painting it on with a brush, I knew one thing without needing logic to back it. Whatever rode the rails without riding them kept a ledger. It collected moments like that stare through glass, and I was already in its book. When the knock came on the shack door, it wasn't loud. It was a polite sound, one rap, then a pause, then another. Knuckles on metal. I stood there not breathing, a man made of a noise he refused to make. The radio, dead a moment before, breathed once and clicked. A man's voice, crisp and friendly in a way that made me want to put my fist through the wall, said, "Number 75, doors." It wasn't an order to me, not in any railroad I knew, but my hand was already reaching for the latch. My hand hovered on the latch, trembling so badly I could hear the rattle of the thin metal catch against the frame. The shack was never warm, not really, but that night it felt as if every BTU of heat had been drawn straight through the walls and out into the fog. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knock didn't repeat. The silence that followed pressed harder than any hammer. The radio hissed. Just static now, no voice. But threaded through it was the faint rhythmic tick of wheels on track. That sound belongs to weight, mass, steel against steel. There were no trains on that line, none for decades. My lungs hurt with how shallow I was breathing. I tried to tell myself it was wind against the siding, an animal brushing the shack, but the animal would have scratched or moved. This had a human rhythm. The urge to open the door was overwhelming. That's what frightened me most. It wasn't curiosity, it was obedience, as if some instruction deeper than language had been issued and my body was following. I forced myself back, pressing my shoulders against the far wall, staring at the latch. It clicked once, as if tested from the outside. My mouth dried up. The shack had one bare bulb hanging from its cord. It swayed slightly, though no draft moved. The filament hummed, pulsing with the same offbeat rhythm as that phantom wheel sound. I closed my eyes. Sometimes you can kill fear by denying its sight. But behind my eyelids, I saw the windows of the train again. Dozens of pale faces, unmoving, pupils set as if painted, all staring out at me. And there in the middle of the row, a man who had raised his hand. Only this time, his palm wasn't on the glass. It was on the door of my shack. The latch shifted again. I must have blacked out, either from terror or the cold. Because the next thing I remember is waking in the chair with my head tilted against the wall, my neck stiff, the radio silent, sunlight cut thin across the floor. I told myself I'd dreamt it. That's what a sane man does. But when I stepped outside, the snow told me otherwise. Tracks, two perfect rectangles, side by side, as if someone with square boots had stood at the door. They went nowhere else. No approach, no retreat, just there, imprinted and waiting. I didn't report for shift the next night. I drove the van out onto Route 4 and kept going, past Mendon, past Killington, all the way toward White River Junction, where the road unwinds along the frozen river. I pulled into a rest area and tried to sleep, but I kept jerking awake at exactly 11:59, heart racing, ears straining for a horn that wasn't there. The van seemed to shiver under me like the tracks were running beneath its tires. 2 days later, I got a call from Jerry. I hadn't given him my number, but somehow he had it. His voice was flat. "If you leave, it'll follow," he said. "It's the schedule that matters, not the geography." He hung up before I could ask what he meant. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I went back. Not out of bravery, not even loyalty to the paycheck. Out of something worse, fatalism. When a thing knows your name, when it has said it aloud, part of you belongs to it. I figured if I stayed close, at least I'd see it coming. The next week, the weather warmed enough for the snow to rot. Mud bled up through the ties. Nights smelled like iron and mildew. On a Tuesday, just after midnight, the fog didn't roll in. It rose straight from the ground, like the earth was exhaling. The rails gleamed wet, though no dew had fallen. My radio, silent for nights, crackled with sudden clarity. Number 75, station stop, all aboard. I couldn't move. The words didn't ask. They commanded. And from the trees from the edge of the yard, I heard footsteps, not shuffling, not staggered, dozens in unison. They pressed into the soft ground but left no footprints behind them. My flashlight beam seemed to bend away, unable to touch what approached. Still, I knew they were there. Faces, rows of them, waiting for the door to open. And then the horn. Low, mournful, impossibly deep. It rolled not through the air but through my bones, vibrating in my teeth and skull until I thought they'd crack. Headlights burned through the fog, not bright but gray, bleaching every shadow into a blank smear. The train slid in, and this time, it stopped. The hiss of brakes filled the yard, though the rails remained still. Doors opened. With a clatter I felt more than heard. And in the hush that followed, I heard my name again, spoken not once but by a chorus, layered voices perfectly aligned. They were calling me aboard. I don't remember deciding. One step carried me forward, then another. The fog wrapped close, damp on my face, my breath erased in the chill. The open doorway glowed, not warmly, but with the flat light of an overcast noon. My hand rose, trembling, reaching for the handle. And then something broke. Not outside. Inside. I thought of my brother that night. I ignored the call. The look on his face when he realized I'd abandoned him. The ledger in me. The pages of guilt. I couldn't hand that to them. Couldn't let them claim it. I staggered back, fell to the gravel, tore my palm open on ballast. The doorway loomed above me. Figures filled the aisles, watching, still as mannequins. Then, just as sudden as it arrived, the train slid forward. No noise, no blast, only that blank light fading into the fog until it was gone. The yard fell silent again. The rails were empty. My blood dripped dark into the snow. I've kept working, though each night is harder. Every time I hear a horn from miles away, I freeze. Every time a light cuts through fog on the highway, my throat closes. But I stay. Because Jerry was right, the schedule isn't broken. And if I leave, it will find me anyway. What haunts me most is not that they wanted me. It's that in those seconds, standing before that open doorway, I wanted them too. The glacier does not forget. That's what I kept telling myself as the wind burned across my cheeks and the crunch of my boots echoed into the hollow silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty at all. It feels full, packed, swollen, like the ice itself is listening, waiting. I'd camped in Montana before, but never this far up a frozen trail, never this close to the shifting blue-white walls of a glacier that seemed alive in its stillness. I told myself it was just the natural groaning of ice, the deep settling of centuries of frozen water pressing down on itself. But when I stopped, when I held my breath and stood still, I could have sworn the groaning bent into syllables, into something shaped like a voice. I didn't want to hear my name. That's the thing. I'd already been warned by another camper 2 nights back, a guy named Ellis, mid-40s, with a beard iced stiff and a nervous shake in his hands. He told me over coffee that the glacier sometimes calls you. Don't answer, he said, his voice breaking, because if you answer, it learns how to keep talking. I laughed it off, pretending I didn't take him seriously. But when I crawled into my Volkswagen that night and zipped my sleeping bag up to my chin, I didn't sleep. I kept waiting for something beyond the howl of the wind, something I wasn't sure I wanted to believe in but feared I already did. Montana in the winter is merciless. Everything you hear is sharp, clean, and yet distorted by the weight of snow. Even silence has a texture. When I set out the following morning, the air bit into my lungs and made my breath wheeze like I was older than I was. My pack weighed heavy, not because of the gear, but because of the tension knotting itself into my back. I kept replaying Ellis's warning. He wasn't drunk and he wasn't trying to scare me. His eyes looked hollow, like someone who'd already been marked. The trail wound higher, up into the gray fog where the sky bent down and erased the horizon. Every crunch of my boots sounded too loud, bouncing off ridges, returning to me in a way that made me feel followed. That's the thing no one tells you about RV camping deep in the cold wilderness. You think you've brought your home with you, that you've carried safety in the shell of a vehicle, but once you step beyond it, you're stripped bare. All you are is a pulse of warmth in a place that doesn't care if you vanish. I reached a narrow pass where the ice had fractured into jagged cliffs on either side. They weren't still. They popped and shifted like bones settling in a body too large to see. That's when I froze. At first, I thought it was the echo of my breath bouncing back strange, but no, it was too clean, too deliberate. The sound didn't belong to me. A word stretched thin and whisper soft. A name. My name. I didn't move. My ears rang with my own heartbeat. Don't answer, Ellis's voice warned inside me. My throat clenched, my lips pressed together so tight they hurt. The glacier sighed again, louder this time, and I heard it without doubt. My name, cracked into the ice, elongated by the cold. Every rational thought fought to take control. It's just the wind, just the shape of the pass, just coincidence. But the moment I turned my head, the sound shifted direction, following. The glacier wasn't calling from one point, it was everywhere, as if the entire frozen mountain knew who I was. I forced myself forward, boots dragging, sweat chilling down my spine despite the air being well below freezing. I didn't want to look behind me. Looking meant acknowledging that something might be there. The path narrowed into a frozen bridge where snow had drifted into a thin lip over empty space. My legs shook. The whispers rose again, faint but growing, like the glacier was learning my voice, practicing it. I almost dropped to my knees right there because I realized Ellis had been right. It doesn't just call once. It learns. It waits for you to slip. When I finally stumbled down to flatter ground, I pitched camp in a hollow of pines twisted by the weight of snow. The Volkswagen creaked as it settled on the frozen dirt, and I ducked inside, lighting a small propane heater. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the lighter. I told myself I wouldn't think about it, that I'd chalk it up to fear and wind and the isolation of being too long without another human voice. But denial has a thin edge. It holds until something pushes harder. That night, I heard it again. Not from the glacier this time, but closer. Not a groan, not a shift of ice, but a whisper curling under the frame of my van. My name, stretched and broken, slipping through the cracks. My stomach knotted, my skin turned cold even near the heater. I clutched the blanket tight and stared at the ceiling. The van wasn't soundproof. The wilderness pressed in like it had teeth. I wanted to scream, to drown it out, but some instinct told me silence was the only defense. If I broke, if I let my voice spill out, I'd be giving it what it wanted. I didn't sleep. I watched shadows crawl across the walls as the night dragged its weight over me. Every creak of the glacier outside sounded like a breath. Every whisper of snow against the van's skin seemed to shape itself closer to words. When the sun bled pale over the horizon, I stepped outside with eyes red and body trembling. And I saw them, tracks. Not animal, not mine. Human footprints leading from the glacier's edge toward my campsite, circling the Volkswagen like a ritual. And then stopping right at the driver's door. That's when I knew the glacier wasn't just remembering names, it was following. I don't think anyone truly understands the weight of their own name until it comes back to them from somewhere that shouldn't know it. Standing in the weak light of dawn, frost clinging to my eyelashes, I traced those footprints circling the Volkswagen, each step pressed sharp and deliberate into the snow. I bent low, studying them, trying to force myself into the rational. Maybe another hiker had wandered by in the night. Maybe Ellis had followed me, spooked by his own warnings and desperate not to be alone. But the prints told another story, too even, too perfectly spaced, as though whoever had walked them hadn't carried weight at all. No drag marks, no uneven press of boot soles, just the imprint, clean as if pressed by a mold, and then the snow around them undisturbed. I followed them with my eyes until they vanished into the drift at the tree line. Not back toward the trail, not anywhere I could understand, just gone. The glacier loomed beyond, its surface glowing faint blue under the weak sun, and for a moment I swore I saw the ice pulse, like a lung expanding and releasing. My first instinct was to pack up and drive, to abandon this experiment of solitude and horror, but fear does strange things to resolve. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I moved too quickly, if I let the fear dictate me, the glacier would know. It would sense my panic and chase it. So I lingered, moving slowly, methodically, boiling water for coffee even though my stomach knotted too tight to drink it, pretending normalcy like it was a shield. Ellis's words gnawed at me. Don't answer. But what did that even mean? Was silence enough? Or had my fear already betrayed me, my thundering heartbeat, my breath breaking into mist? Around mid-morning, the forest fell too quiet. Not the natural hush of snowfall, but a cut like something had drawn a blade through sound itself. Even the birds that usually scattered in cold gusts were gone. That's when I realized the footprints hadn't just vanished. They'd been erased. The drift, where they had disappeared, now looked smooth, untouched. I blinked hard, trying to convince myself I'd misread the snow earlier, but the circle around the Volkswagen remained clear as ritual, proof etched in frozen ground. Only the exit was gone, swallowed by the white. The silence pressed into me, dense, suffocating. My mind turned traitor, whispering possibilities I didn't want to consider. What if the glacier hadn't been calling out from its surface, but had already sent something forward? What if those footprints weren't from another camper, but from a memory pulled out of the ice, walking on legs it borrowed? That night, I made the mistake of listening too long. I'd kept the heater running low, the van sealed tight, the sleeping bag zipped until it felt like a shroud. The wind picked up after dusk, shrieking against the metal shell, and I told myself it was nothing. But beneath the howl, beneath the groan of shifting ice, there it was again. My name. Softer now, closer. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The sound wasn't only external anymore. It crawled through my chest cavity, vibrating inside my ribs, my own blood humming with syllables. I bit down hard to keep from speaking, to keep from answering, but my jaw ached, and a low whimper broke loose anyway. The glacier didn't miss it. The whisper rose in tone, matching me, curling in satisfaction. Sleep became impossible. I started measuring the night in heartbeats, in the creaks of the Volkswagen's frame, in how long I could hold my breath before panic forced it out in steaming bursts. At one point, I thought I heard footsteps on the roof. Slow, deliberate. Crossing above my head until the weight stopped right over the thin sheet of metal between us. I gripped the blanket and stared at the ceiling, waiting for it to cave, for hands of ice to drag me out, but nothing happened. Not then. By dawn, I'd reached a breaking point. The thought of staying another night made my stomach churn bile. I told myself I would hike back down, that the road out of the valley would be clearer than I feared, that the Volkswagen could handle it if I just forced it to. I packed in shaking movements, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds, because the forest no longer felt indifferent, it felt predatory. But when I turned the key, the engine coughed once and died. I tried again, pumping the gas, but it only wheezed as though the cold had reached inside and frozen the machine's heart. My breath came fast, too fast. I slammed the wheel with my palm, panic setting in like fire. That's when I heard it, the sound of ice breaking, echoing across the valley. I shot my head up. The glacier beyond the trees split with a deep groan that seemed to bend into syllables, forming not just my name now, but others. Different tones, overlapping, like a choir. Ellis, Claire, Marcus. Names I didn't know, rising and falling in unison, chanted by the frozen walls. I staggered out of the van, snow blinding me with reflected light. The glacier pulsed again, cracking, whispering names into the wind. And then, I swear I saw shapes within the ice. Human outlines pressed just beneath the surface, mouths open as if mid-cry. They moved when the glacier spoke, their forms shifting against the frozen walls. My first instinct was to run, to dive into the trees and not stop until my lungs gave out. But another instinct pinned me still. Curiosity, maybe, or some pull the glacier itself exhaled. My feet crunched forward without permission, carrying me toward the edge of the ice. My name boomed again, and this time it didn't sound like it was coming from outside me. It came from behind my teeth. I stumbled to my knees, choking it back, biting my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The glacier's choir grew louder, layering names over names until it sounded like the weight of history itself was crashing into my ears. I dropped my head, hands clutching at snow, trying to ground myself, trying to remember who I was beneath the sound. And then I saw them. The footprints again, leading away from me this time, stretching across the flat ice toward the glacier's base. My heart hammered. They hadn't been there before. They hadn't been anywhere. But now they waited like a trail carved just for me. And still, the whisper pressed harder. My name again, so close, so tender, it almost sounded like my mother calling me from the porch when I was a child. For a moment, against all my will, I wanted to answer. To give in, to let it take the weight of choice from me. That was the moment I understood what Ellis had meant. It wasn't just a warning not to speak. It was survival. Because the glacier doesn't only remember names. It wears them, keeps them, pulls them into its body until they're nothing but voices in the frozen choir. And now it wanted me to join. The longer I stayed kneeling in the snow, the more the air itself seemed to vibrate with voices. It wasn't just my name anymore. The glacier was unfurling a list, syllables rattling against one another, names belonging to people I didn't know, some I couldn't even pronounce. Each one cracked through the ice like brittle bones snapping. And yet, no matter how many strangers it called, mine threaded through them all, louder, more insistent, like a thread being pulled from a shirt until nothing would be left but unravel. I forced myself backward, stumbling into the tree line, dragging my body against trunks as if their rough bark could anchor me to something solid. My breath came in shallow bursts. The van sat there like a useless shell, already circled, already marked. I couldn't rely on it anymore. If the glacier had reached into the machine's lungs and frozen them, what hope did I have? That was when I noticed it. The air wasn't just cold, it was wet. My gloves came away damp when I wiped my face. At first, I thought it was sweat, but no, the snow around me was melting. A thin trickle slid down my wrist, and I looked up to see droplets forming on the branches overhead, even though the temperature hadn't risen. The glacier was breathing warmth, exhaling it, reshaping the valley, and all of it was centered on me. I pressed deeper into the trees, each step crunching louder than the last, each sound echoing back warped and wrong. Branches cracked like knuckles. Shadows leaned closer. But worse than the forest distortion was the realization that the voices were following, not carried by the wind now, but stitched into the air like a frequency only I could hear. Every step I took, the glacier repeated it with my name. My legs burned, but panic gave me strength. I broke into a run, my pack bouncing against my spine, lungs tearing at the air. The forest tilted, the trail vanishing under sudden drifts, branches clawing my shoulders. For a terrible moment, I swore the trees themselves were rearranging, twisting into new patterns, closing me off from escape. I spun around, desperate to see the van, but all I saw was white, endless white, as if the forest had dissolved behind me. And then I heard another voice. Not the glacier's, not my own echoing heartbeat, but Ellis, clear as if he was running just ahead of me, his breath ragged. "Don't stop," he shouted. "It doesn't let go if you stop." I froze anyway. The words cut through me, raw and desperate. Ellis was miles away. He hadn't followed. I knew this. But the voice was so perfect, so exact, that my knees weakened. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe I wasn't alone in this. That hesitation cost me. The ground groaned beneath my boots. At first it was faint like distant thunder, but then it spread, ice cracking in a web beneath the snow. My stomach lurched. I leapt forward, but the crust gave way, plunging me knee-deep into slush that hadn't been there a second before. My scream tore from my throat before I could bite it back, and the glacier seized it. I heard my own voice rebound through the valley, louder, warped, stretched into something not mine anymore. The choir shifted instantly, dozens of voices layering mine into their cadence. They repeated my scream like it was a verse in a song. My skin crawled, my throat clenched shut. I ripped myself free of the wet snow, stumbling on frozen legs. The forest didn't look like a forest anymore. It was a corridor, every trunk bent inward, guiding me somewhere I didn't want to go. The footprints appeared again, glowing faint against the crust. Not behind me this time, but ahead. always ahead, like the path had already been chosen. I wanted to turn back, but when I did, the trees had sealed shut. No sign of the van, no trail, only the glacier's pulse pressing at my spine. I followed the prints. I didn't want to, but there was no choice left. My name whispered in rhythm with each step, the ice testing its syllables like a tongue learning language. The air smelled metallic, coppery, like blood frozen into the ground. My mouth dried until every swallow felt like glass. After what felt like hours but might have been minutes, the corridor opened. I found myself at the base of the glacier, its wall rising 100 feet, sheer and glimmering. And there, they waited. Faces, hundreds of them, pressed behind the translucent ice, eyes wide, mouths open mid-call. Some looked fresh, skin pale but intact, others blurred, smudged by centuries of shifting ice. And there, my stomach dropped, was Ellis, his beard unmistakable, his hands pressed flat against the wall, his eyes bulging with terror. His lips moved, and though muffled, the shape of the words were clear. Don't answer. The ice boomed again. My name so loud the ground shook with it. I collapsed, palms digging into snow that burned my skin. My body begged to scream, to answer, to release the terror locked in my chest. But I bit down until my teeth ached, tasting iron, shoving my fist against my mouth. The glacier didn't relent. It pulsed, it cracked, and then, the worst sound yet, it began to mimic my voice. Not whispering my name anymore, but using it. Speaking it the way I did when I introduced myself to strangers, the exact cadence, the same breath pattern, even the nervous hitch at the end. Hearing my own voice crawl back to me from the ice broke something inside. That was when I finally understood. This wasn't about calling me in. It was about replacing me. If I stayed, if I gave it one more word, one more sound, it would have enough. It wouldn't just remember me. It would be me. I staggered back, legs trembling, mind unraveling. The forest closed behind me, the prints waiting to lead me deeper, the faces begging, the glacier booming my name like a funeral bell. I knew then, if I didn't find a way out before nightfall, I'd be another voice, another memory, frozen in the choir. The moment I realized the glacier was learning to wear my voice, something inside me snapped. Panic surged like fire in my veins, hot enough to burn through the cold. I staggered backward, snow flying around me, the wall of faces still pressed against the ice, watching, pleading, some of them thrashing as though they wanted to break free but couldn't. Ellis's eyes followed me the hardest, his mouth forming the same words over and over. Don't answer, don't answer, don't answer. But how long could silence save me? How long before my own body betrayed me again with a cry or a breath too loud? Already my lungs ached from holding back the scream clawing its way up. Already the glacier had stolen enough of my voice to repeat it. The prints glowed faint ahead of me, leading away, and every instinct screamed not to follow. But behind me was nothing but walls of trees bent inward, trunks twisted unnaturally as though the forest had obeyed the glacier's command. No road, no van, no way back to safety. My only choice was forward, into the path the glacier wanted me to walk. I forced my feet into motion, every step crunching louder than I wanted, every echo a betrayal. The voices shifted, whispering new names, but mine never stopped threading through them. My name bent into songs, chants, laughter, sobbing. Each variation carried a different edge, a different lure, as if the glacier were trying on masks. I walked faster, then faster still until I was half running, branches slapping against my shoulders, my pack dragging at my spine. Snow kicked up behind me, and when I glanced over my shoulder, my blood ran colder than the air itself. The footprints weren't just ahead of me anymore. They were behind me too, closing in. I broke into a sprint, my body screaming, lungs tearing at the air. My legs felt like they were moving through water, every step heavier than the last, but fear pushed me beyond reason. The forest blurred, shadows bending in ways that didn't make sense, and the whispers rose into howls. Then a clearing. I stumbled out onto open ice, smooth and glimmering like glass under the dim light. My boots skidded, arms flailing for balance. I fell to my knees, the cold burning straight through the fabric. And there, in the center of the clearing, A fissure split the ice, steam curling from its depths like the glacier itself was exhaling. The voices were loudest here, booming up through the fissure, rising with the warmth. My name again, dozens of times over and over until I felt it breaking apart in my skull. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside me now. I crawled back, trying to get off the ice, but the fissure widened with a crack that shook the ground. A shape rose in the steam. At first I thought it was smoke, twisting into form, but no, it was ice. A body molded from shards, tall and thin, its face nothing more than a hollow cut into a mask of frozen water. And yet, when it opened its mouth, it was my voice that poured out. I screamed. I couldn't help it. The sound tore through me before I could bite it back. My scream and its scream overlapped, identical, until I couldn't tell which one was mine anymore. The choir erupted with it, all the trapped faces thrashing in their translucent coffins. The ice figure stepped toward me, its movements stiff, jagged, but steady. It spoke again, my voice introducing myself, my voice laughing the way I had once laughed at Ellis's warning, my voice crying out in pain. It was stealing every piece of me, one sound at a time. I ran. I don't remember getting up. My body just did it, legs pistoning, boots sliding across the ice as I scrambled toward the far side of the clearing. The fissure split wider behind me, the booming voices chasing, the ice cracking underfoot with every step. The tree line rushed closer. I dove into it, branches tearing at my clothes, bark ripping skin from my palms. The forest wasn't kind. It felt like it was trying to hold me, to slow me down. But I forced my way through, blind with panic. My name followed, echoing from every trunk, every drift of snow, bouncing back in perfect imitation. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours, maybe days. Time unraveled under the pressure of fear. The only thing I knew was that if I stopped, even for a breath, the glacier would take me. At last, through the blur of white and black trunks, I saw it, the van. My Volkswagen sat half buried in snow, the windows frosted over, the outline of safety so fragile it almost looked like a hallucination. I burst through the final line of trees, collapsing against the driver's door, fumbling for the handle with shaking hands. My fingers were numb, uncooperative, but I wrenched it open and hurled myself inside. The air smelled of propane and metal, sharp and stale. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and curled into the seat, sobbing, my body shaking with adrenaline. Outside, the voices swirled, circling, pressing against the glass. My name, my laugh, my screams, all looping, all wrong. And then they stopped. Silence. Crushing, absolute. I lifted my head, ears ringing. The world outside looked still, the trees unmoving, the snow untouched. For a moment, I thought I'd outrun it, that the glacier had given up, let me go. But then I saw them. In the frost coating the inside of the windshield, words were etched, letters formed by the slow crawl of ice, deliberate, undeniable. I remember you.